Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in, everybody. How's everybody doing? We're early today. Sorry, we're going early today, everybody, because I gotta get my car looked at again. Try to get it finished. The repairs finished, so we're starting early. So let's just get right into it because good morning, everybody. Good morning to the beautiful mods, my baby's army, Donna. Good morning, Carol. Just go back up here. Welcome in. I think that's everybody, ladies. We got a small crowd because we're starting earlier. So let's just get into it. I think we're going to continue to cover Tepe and do it separately from Gus and then move into Gus as the week goes on because, well, there's so much going on with Tepe. So much going on. I have days of content that I have been putting together. Okay, everybody.
Afternoon, we're breaking into programming with a special report out of the Chicago area. Michael David McKee, the man accused of killing a couple in their Wineland Park home December 30th, was in court moments ago. Our crew at the courthouse in Rockford, Illinois, telling us McKee waived his right for an extradition hearing. Steve Levine joining us live right now. Steve?
That's right, Terry. And this hearing lasted just a few minutes, less than 5 minutes. McKee walked in wearing a jail suit. He was in shackles. He showed no emotion. And as you said, the hearing lasted just a few minutes. He waived his right for an extradition hearing. His public defender also entered a not guilty plea and said he wanted to get back to Ohio to expedite the process. Now, what happens next is there is a hearing scheduled on Monday to make sure he is transferred. But in that time, the Winnebago County Sheriff here will be working with local authorities in Franklin County, the Sheriff's Office, and the Columbus Police to get McKee transferred back to Columbus and face charges there.
Steve, any inkling as to where he has been this whole time, McKee, and where they arrested McKee the other day?
Well, they found his car in a location where he was working over the weekend as a vascular surgeon. He is here in the Winnebago Justice Center, which includes the jail. He has been here since Saturday when he was arrested. And as I said, now work is underway to get him transferred back to Ohio.
All right, Steve Levine, thanks so much. Reporting live from Rockford. Monique Tepe was married to McKee for about 2 years. They were divorced in 2017. She then married the dentist, Spencer Tepe, 4 years ago this past December. They had 2 kids, 4 and 1. Monique and Michael didn't have any kids. Court records show their split was amicable, so the motive remains a mystery. Detectives haven't wanted to say much about the case to avoid conflicts in his prosecution. Services were held for the Tepes yesterday. Now, here's what we do know about the case. The couple was killed December 30th. Police say it happened just before 4 a.m. and there was no sign of a break-in. Court records show video surveillance was able to find a car near the Wineland Park home around that time. That same car, as Steve just mentioned, found over the weekend in Rockford and traced back to McKee. He was then arrested Saturday. We're following and we're getting new updates on the investigation. We'll have everything we've learned tonight at 5 and 6.
Okay, as I stated in the beginning, we are doing a deep dive on the X today. So let's just pull up that one. You know, you have too many videos open when it's taking you this long to pull them up. Okay, let's go. We're going to see yesterday, we saw some court footage, but it turns out other channels were looking to stream it live, but it was just a very brief clipping. Here it is here.
All right, folks, turning now to Illinois, where a hearing got underway today for defendant Michael McKee. He's the man charged with murdering his ex-wife and her husband in Ohio. Now, McKee was booked over the weekend, alleged to have shot and killed Spencer and Monique Tepe in their Columbus home. Now, the couple's 2 young children were in the home at the time, but police say they were not harmed.
We want to get you back into court now, rather, for the start of this hearing for Michael McKee.
On the table, Michael McKee. Please.
Alexander. Third quarter, the defendant is present in custody.
Can you answer for the record, Michael McKee? Have you had a chance to speak with him?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's your impression of this time?
Yes, at this time, Your Honor, on behalf of Mr. McKee, I will assert his right to counsel. I will assert his right to remain silent. And Mr. McKee believes that the most expeditious manner in which he may defend himself against the charges pending in Ohio and to plead not guilty would be to waive his right to an extradition hearing and to have a governor's warrant and to agree to his immediate transportation to Ohio.
Understood, thank you. We will set this matter then for 2 o'clock on Monday for status on the transfer.
Thank you.
Anything else we can do today? Thanks, everyone.
All right, let's bring in criminal defense attorney Josh Shivers. Short but sweet, waiving extradition, from my perspective as a judge, not that big of a deal. I mean, you can fight it, but generally, if they have that evidence as to where it occurred and what they have in that other state, they're going to extradite. Your thoughts on this waiver?
Exactly. It's this.
That's a really good point. Why do they keep calling it an amicable divorce? You're right. But that's, I think, because mainstream media isn't reporting on the details that we covered here, My Baby's Army. We're going to get into it, some of it in some podcasts in a second. Good morning, Marie. Good morning, honey. Yeah, he doesn't look like he's super emotional. Note, he's not wearing a suicide vest. And he maintains his right to maintain silence. He looks foreboding. He looks massive and very cold in the eyes and just uncaring. Let's keep listening.
Smartest and most efficient way to move the process forward. He ain't going to win anything fighting extradition. May as well get to where you need to go as quickly as possible. That hopefully smooths out his initial appearances at his eventual destination. And let me just tell you, when this case broke last week, we talked about how this is the kind of scariest crime there is because there was no lead. There was nothing. This was the terror in the night. Big sigh of relief that someone who could very likely be the responsible party was identified quickly by law enforcement through the investigation. Yeah. This is the kind of crime that is just heart-rending. It's just awful.
Yeah, it's heart-rending. And on some level, you got to wonder what the motivation might have been. Nothing of that sort given out. But he was captured because of good detective work, good investigation work. They connected a car, but also they had surveillance video of someone walking in the area where these crimes were committed. Let's pull that up. It's always chilling to see these things. Even by the way this person is walking, who they believe was Michael McKee, might have been involved in this crime in this way. But just one of the things I want to ask you is when I think about a case like this, you think about motive, as I mentioned earlier. This is his ex-wife. And I wonder, is this still the type of case that you can look at as being part of a domestic violence situation? I do not know whether there was any of that type of thing when they were involved in any way. But again, sometimes you leave someone and they look at you over there being happy and creating a family, and that makes them seethe. And again, it's sort of this extension of domestic violence.
It's definitely within that realm of discourse. I was just talking with a senior prosecutor here today about how domestic violence continues to be studied and it affects all parts of our judicial system, not even just criminal, but the civil as well, because the cycles of domestic violence create future problems. If you're a young person and you're exposed to domestic violence in the home, you have a higher likelihood of lots of negative externalities occurring. That goes over to literally family law. It goes to civil cases. It goes to fights in workplaces. domestic violence and how we handle emotional dysregulation as people, one of the biggest challenges facing us existentially as a nation when we talk about criminal justice.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Emotional dysregulation. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And this is one of those people, Judge, one of the last people you consider. I believe he was a vascular surgeon or a surgeon.
Right.
And again, anyone who can get to that level clearly is someone that's respected in the community, not someone you'd suspect of something like
Absolutely. And smart and focused to have accomplished that level of education and work. I want to do this, though, because I want to talk about some of the differences between Spencer and Monique, specifically first, the way they were killed. And I think we have a full screen that provides a lot of the information factually, the differences that Spencer had multiple gunshot wounds and Monique had at least one wound to the chest, that there were no obvious signs of forced entry, no firearm was found on the scene. And then again, that surveillance video, as well as detectives linked McKee to a vehicle that arrived just before the murders. These facts, I think, help build that circumstantial case, although the two killings can be used, I think, by the defense, Josh, as two differences between the killings, perhaps meaning two killers.
Yeah, Judge, you've seen this so many times in your practice before you got on television, that these are the kinds of cases where that perfectly normal person you interact with all the time snaps in a way no one can predict. Now, when it comes to defending it, sure, they're going to put up the idea that there could be other people. There's calls about another harassing interaction with a neighbor down the street in the middle of the night. Heck, I've had my door rattled at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning by someone trying to get $20. So there's always these other alternatives. But when you get down to the linkages we know about already, combine it with this prior relationship, we don't even know how aggressive that process was. There's going to be investigation into the suspect's family life, his personality currently. And I think that it's going to be a strong effort from the state if it all lines up.
Yeah, now this whole thing came to light 10, 11 days ago or so. The gentleman who was killed in this case, the victim, didn't show up for work, causing his boss to call 911 because he's not the kind of guy that wouldn't have shown up for work without calling in. Let's take a quick listen to that 911 call.
Did you receive information that he may have been involved in an accident, or?
No, ma'am. I just know that he is he is always on time, and he would contact us if there was any issues whatsoever. And I just don't know how else to say this. We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
Josh, I want to take you back to that hearing that we saw. We've both been at this a long time. I got a bit of a vibe from it when they pled not guilty. They waived the extradition, and he agrees to an immediate transfer to Ohio. Made me feel like they aggressively want to try this case. Makes me feel like he wants to fight and show his innocence. Did you get that sense in the way this went down, the way this hearing went away?
Absolutely. In fact, it's one of the first things that's come to my head, and it's just like what you talked about. We've done this for so long. If you know you're going to face, let's just face it, a factually strong investigation, the best thing you can do is pressure them to try it too fast. You can force unforced errors. You can make sure the state doesn't have the time and luxury to really go through everything in the way that they would like by filing, speedy trial demands. And it depends on how that works mechanically from state to state. But we call it in Georgia jamming them up because the state doesn't have enough resources to adequately prepare for a high-profile, concentrated, complex case in a short period of time, which in Georgia, you're talking about 1 or 2 terms of court. It can be as short as a couple of months. I see that as being a very valid defense, but telling, because the other side of the coin is just, you gone, man. You gone.
You don't want that.
Yeah, I don't want that. So just tell us, if you could briefly, Josh, what happens next? We know extradition is waived. They have to get all the different law enforcement people lined up to safely transport him to Ohio. What do we expect next?
Yeah, there's actually an interstate transport system that's been set up to facilitate, because thousands of inmates go around the nation on any given day. It is not a luxurious form of travel. It's the most local bus of all local buses. But once he arrives in the appropriate jurisdiction, everything's going to be set up. He's going to have a first appearance. He's going to be presented with copies of the information that he's required. They're going to immediately handle whether he's going to be appointed a public defender. Even if he's going to get private counsel, a public defender may be available for that initial appearance hearing where very little comes from the defendant other than a not guilty. And then I expect the people of Ohio to put him on a regular prosecution track. That's where that speedy trial could possibly come.
So as we heard, he did not challenge them to his extradition hearing. So that came as a not surprising to most experts. We're going to listen to just a few minutes of this because we kind of agreed with Nancy. Now she's a little more vocal about it, but listen what she has to say.
In the last hours, what does a starter marriage, a very brief starter marriage, have to do with this case? Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
There's a body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just did a lot of shit. We just came here and he appears dead.
The dentist and his wife gunned down, children upstairs.
There's a body. There's a body inside? Yeah.
Who's that guy? Who's that guy walking down the back alley between the back of the Tepe's home and the backs of the other homes on the other street? An alley runs between them. What is he doing walking that quiet residential neighborhood between 2 and 5 a.m.? First thing I want to know, and what does a starter marriage have to do with a double murder? You know what a starter marriage is, right? It's your first marriage. It's brief. It doesn't work out. You get a quick divorce. It's like nothing happened, right? Let's start with what we know with the 911 calls. Now, you're going to have to restrain yourself when you hear this 911 dispatcher. Let's start.
Nancy ain't holding back, boys and girls.
At the beginning.
Yes, I would like to ask for a wellness check on an individual at their home. This individual, Spencer, works with me, and he did not show up to work this morning, and we cannot get a hold of him or his family. He is always on time, and he would contact us if there was any issues whatsoever. And I just don't know how else to say this. Like, we're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
Yes,
when
Carol.
Dr. Spencer Tepe doesn't show up for work at Athens Dental Depot in Columbus, Ohio, coworkers are so shocked. They call their boss, the owner of Athens Dental, Dr. Mark Valrose. Valrose is on vacation in Florida, but Spencer not showing up is so unusual. Coworkers felt the need to let Valrose know. Valrose tries to contact Spencer, and failing at that, Tepe's wife, Monique, as she's even more predictable than her husband. Unable to reach either Tepe, Valrose calls 911 in Columbus, Ohio at 9:03 a.m. requesting a wellness check.
And the 911 dispatch officer just too busy, painting her nails?
Nancy's going to go off for a few minutes. We're going to play that. We've played both sides of the coin here. We played the 911 dispatcher that was interviewed, the niece of Gavin Fish. And so, yes, Ohio has the death penalty. Let's keep listening.
What's going on there? Listen to the way she responds when more calls are pouring in about the dentist and his wife.
What's the emergency there?
Our boss did not report for work. We haven't been able to get a hold of him for 3 hours. We are on site and we can hear.
Okay, I just talked to somebody there.
Okay, I'm just making sure somebody called.
Officers arrive at the Tepe residence at 9:22 a.m. Officers knock on the front door multiple times but get no response. Checking the door and windows, officers see no sign of disturbance. At the back door, officers again knock multiple times, no response. Repeating the process, officers fail to get a response and file the report in their logbook, no response.
Straight out to an all-star panel joining us tonight to make sense of what we are learning before I can even get to the starter marriage clue. What in the world is wrong with the 911 dispatch? And I'm going to play you some more that is riling everybody up. But did you hear that? Susan Hendricks joining us, investigative journalist, author of Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi, which is the definitive book on the Delphi murders of Libby and Abby. Susan Hendricks, didn't you already tell me that? Why am I hearing this again? I already sent somebody there. See, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's not the only reason I'm angry at 911 dispatch, but that's the beginning. And her attitude is so blasé. Then we know that coworkers and friends are there banging on the door and they're hearing a child screaming on the inside. And this dispatch is just like too bored to have anything to do with it. Look, I already sent somebody. What's her problem?
Exactly. Spencer and Monique's friends and colleagues knew that something was wrong. They took matters into their own hands and drove there themselves. She sounds bothered, saying at one point, I already took a couple calls on this. What's different now? I mean, it's outrageous how bothered she seems. That is her job, to connect people with help when you need it.
It's almost like What is it? Okay, let's move forward. Listen.
A coworker of Spencer goes to the Tepe residence and calls 911, explaining Tepe is her boss and they haven't been able to get a hold of him. The caller tries to tell dispatch they can hear kids inside, but the dispatcher talks over the caller, telling her, I just talked to somebody there. The distraught coworker apologizes, saying she was just making sure someone called.
Okay, we do have officers responding there. Do you know if he's been ill or anything like that?
No, I was just listening today.
And it goes on. Listen.
What's the emergency there, police or medical?
Maybe both, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of doing the
We
wellness.
had a call out there. They knocked on the front door and back door multiple times, and there was no answer.
Yeah, no answer. I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell, but we can't get in.
One of Spencer's friends goes to the Tepe home and calls 911 at 9:57 a.m. Dispatch tells the friend officers have already been to the location and knocked on doors and got no answer. The friend says, yeah, no answer. I can hear kids inside, and I think I heard one yell, explaining how he hasn't been able to get inside the house.
That's right. Isn't that correct? To Dave Mack joining us, Crime Stories investigative reporter. The coworkers are there. The friends are there. They hear the child screaming, yet dispatch is saying, I sent somebody there. Nothing's happening. There's nothing to see. Go away.
Nancy, it is so shocking that you've got family and friends that are out there, coworkers, they're on both sides of the house. And the reason they're calling is because of the way the dispatcher is acting. It's like, we're here. We can hear this. They're trying to get in the house. They can't get in the house. They know they hear children. And this idea that the dispatcher can't understand what they're saying or doesn't care, it just goes beyond what any of us expect.
To Joseph Scott Morgan joining us, renowned professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University. He is the author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon. He's a star of a hit podcast series, Body Bags with Joe Scott Morgan. But for my purposes, he is a death investigator who has investigated over 10,000 deaths of all variety. That includes accidental, natural causes, unexplained, of course, suicide and homicide. 10,000, over 10,000. So, Joe Scott Morgan, let me just pose you a little hypothetical. Sure. At this point, for all we know, they could have still been alive when this dispatch officer is playing Ring Around the Rosie with the people calling 911. That's why I'm so angry. Were they alive? I don't know. Probably not. But Joe Scott,
what do y'all think? What do y'all think? Do you think, because we're going to play another clip from another podcaster who's well known, that we watch here often, who's also really upset about the tainting of the evidence. Do you think this will end up being something that proves to be a problem in this case down the road? Yes or no? Put your comments in the chat.
They could have been alive.
Yeah, it's quite possible. And you've got these kids that can be heard. You know, people have borne witness to this. They're ear witnesses to it. They can hear these kids inside of the house. And that's something, there's a lack, I might call it a lack of enthusiasm. It almost seems apathetic. You know, like next, you know, here, DMV, here, take your number and wait in line. And it's very sad.
Lack of enthusiasm.
Yeah, lack of enthusiasm.
She should be fired. This is the kind of job that you wake up with your boots on. You don't have the enthusiasm, then get out. Get out and bring in somebody that actually cares about life and death. You know what? I saw that happen when prosecutors and defense attorneys would become very, very jaded. It just wasn't fun anymore. And I'm using quotes because I actually heard a judge say that. Sitting back in his chambers, he would have high tea every afternoon with China from Great Britain. He went, oh, it's just not fun anymore. I'm like, I've got a double murder out there to try with all the victims' families lined up in the first 4 rows. Find the fun and get on the bench. So if they're that apathetic, as you describe it very euphemistically, lack of enthusiasm, get the hay out, Joe Scott. You want a death investigator on your watch that has a lack of enthusiasm? My rear end.
Yeah, in any of the job descriptions I've ever written over the course of my career, fun never entered into it. You have to be serious about this business, Nancy, because it is, in fact, life and death. And let's just say, for instance, that you had a subject that was in cardiac arrest. And you've heard these calls where people will say, well, they're not breathing. You know, you want this person actually telling you how to go through the CPR process. And this is a problem. But what's really the big problem, Nancy, is what waits on the other side of that door. And this lack of enthusiasm, I hope it doesn't extend out to the rest of the department, because you got to be vested in a case like this. As you know, Nancy, no matter what door you walk through, you never know what's waiting for you on the other side. And in this case, it was an absolute horror show.
Okay, Dr. Bethany Marshall, I'm about to make my next salient point up, an evidentiary or legal point, but I did the big no-no. I put myself in the shoes of the victims. Mm-hmm. I remember Dr. Bethany, guys, joining me is psychoanalyst Dr. Bethany Marshall. She is the author of Deal Breakers. You can see her now on Peacock. You can find her at drbethanymarshall.com. It goes on and on. Dr. Bethany, when my twins were born, I'm like, as you know, Lucy and I almost died. I'm like, please just let me live, Lord. Just let me live to get them through healthy to come home from the ICU. Okay. Then it was, let me just get them to the first year, the second year, through middle school, through high school. Now I'm like, Lord, please let me help them get them through college. Please just let me live that long. My point is, they left 2 babies behind, screaming. I pray to God those children don't remember what they found. Their mom and dad dead, but you know what? Deep down inside, I bet they do.
You know, Nancy, this dispatch officer, first of all, doesn't sound like she has lack of enthusiasm. She sounds punitive, like she's critical of them for being in a crisis. I just want to underscore that. The children, you know, the youngest was 17 months old, and a 17-month-old's body systems are still being regulated by the mother's body. Like when the mother.
Sorry, I was muted, I think. I was just saying this statement of her being apathetic comes from a psychotherapist to boot, right? It's wild.
Holds the baby, it regulates the baby's heartbeat and other systems. So that premature disruption of that relationship actually predisposes this little one to heart attack, stroke, all kinds of illnesses throughout the lifespan. And even if they do not remember the bloody scene they may have witnessed, this is going to reside in their unconscious at a pre-verbal, pre-conscious level. They're going to always know what happened, and relationships are going to feel unsafe because they're going to be afraid that.
Listen to this, Dr. Bethany.
Now that is very hard to hear. That's so sad to hear. We're going to keep moving along here. We're going to keep moving along. Very sad, very, very sad. Listen in.
About the Tepe murders an hour or so earlier than they did, had the officer who was assigned to do the wellness check, the welfare check, simply gone to the right house. To their credit, the police acknowledged the mistake early on, but the body cam video shows just how off that officer was. He wasn't just at the wrong house number. He wasn't even on the right street, and he wasn't expecting to find anything amiss. Yeah, this house on the left here, this is 1417 on Summit Street. Doesn't look a thing like the Tepe house at 1411 North 4th. Number's wrong, street is wrong. The cop found no signs of trouble, obviously, because it was the wrong place, and he left, which left Spencer and Mo Tepe's friends to check for themselves. And when they made their way inside the home, those friends discovered him dead in a pool of blood. They did not see his wife, Mo, and they were the ones who called 911. And this time the cops did manage to find the right house. So does that even matter? You bet it matters. By innocently poking around outside and inside the Tepe's home, trying to figure out what was wrong, those friends might have accidentally mucked up some critical evidence at the murder scene that police would have preserved had they roped off the house with crime scene tape much earlier. You know, evidence like the killer's footprints in the snow, maybe even inside the house, in the carpets. Look, murder cases have been won or lost on a lot less than that. And I can't wait to get to my next guest on this, because Matt Murphy's a former homicide prosecutor and author of The Book of Murder, A Prosecutor's Journey Through Love and Death. Matt, thanks so much for coming on. You know, the footprints outside the house, it bothers me so much because it was snowy in Columbus. And that would have been something that they could actually see, track, and then match to footwear if they could find it in, you know, Dr. McKee's home in Chicago.
Ideally, you're right. But you know what, actually, there's always mistakes made in cases like this. And every murder case is like a collage of evidence. It's the accumulated weight of everything that they have. And snow is tricky. In Southern California, as you can imagine, we don't get too many of those. I actually learned in a Bigfoot documentary, believe it or not, snow is tricky because when it freezes and melts in consecutive cycles, they tend to grow. And you can imagine what a defense lawyer could do with that. Blood is better. I have done those. I've done socked impressions where somebody's wearing socks and they step in blood. But remember, this is going to be an accumulation. So right now, there's some FBI agent, literally as we speak, pouring through this guy's computer records, cell phone records. They're looking at cell phone towers. Given the distance that he drove, he had to stop for gas, assuming, he's presumed innocent, but assuming they got it right. So there's an avalanche of evidence coming that we have not heard yet.
So
and of course, you're right.
I'm going to talk about that, Matt. In just a second, I'm going to talk to, like, in the next block, I'm literally going to run through all this digital and electronic evidence, but I'm still kind of stuck on the footprints, not maybe just outside, but also inside the house, because there could have been shoe impressions made inside the house as well, maybe on the carpet, maybe in blood, but it's compromised by the people who got there because the police didn't. So I was worried about that, but I'm also thinking about shoe treads. I have seen murder cases where a shoe tread is actually looked at for what's stuck inside the tread. Material from the crime scene. They might have had special gravel put on their back, patio area that suddenly would show up in Chicago if that's the case. Are these the kinds of details that police are going after right now, like literally going down to the granular?
Oh, you bet they are. So any shoes that he's got are, I guarantee they're already in police custody, and they're going to be looked at by.
I'll finish that video another day. We didn't finish it all because there's so much to get through, but yeah. Sad to think about the impact on these children for sure.
By forensics, and what they're going to look for is what's called GSR, or gunshot residue. Another thing to remember is when somebody has a firearm, he's got quite a jawline, doesn't he? This guy. When somebody has a firearm, it's not like TV where it's just a gun. Guns come along with gun boxes and cleaning equipment and ammunition. And what's really interesting, Ashley, is there is a system known as NIBIN. And that's the National Ballistics database, where they take shell casings, assuming it's a semi-automatic handgun. We don't know that yet. But the shell casings that get expended on those, they're like DNA for firearms. And as DNA got all the glory, it's been like the rock star of forensic science. Very quietly, there's been huge forensic advancements in ballistic technology where they microscopically can match the grooves. We just had that in the Ashley Buzzard case in California. The tiny little microscopic grooves from the expended empty shell casing that gets ejected from the gun. And that is incredibly persuasive in front of a jury, having done those murder cases before. So it's going to be an accumulation of evidence here, and I can't wait to see what they got.
So it's 11 days after the fact that they found the car, found him. So I am curious about gunshot residue, maybe even on the steering wheel or anything that might have been in the car that matches a weapon of any kind, or shell casings or shells or anything like that. But I'm also really interested in hairs and fibers and DNA. For instance, if it's Dr. McKee and he was in that house, he could have shed hairs, he could have shed fibers from clothes that they could find in the apartment in Chicago. He may have some transfer DNA, touch DNA, but he also might be bringing something back with him, meaning he could be bringing carpet fibers from the Tepe home back on those shoes or his lower pant legs or anything like that. And so I'm just always curious about how carefully the closet of the suspect is processed.
No, they're going to go through everything. And one of the things that nobody gets to see, Ashley, that I've been privileged to witness about 100 times at murder scenes, when you actually go, are the crime lab personnel and the forensic scientists at 3 o'clock in the morning who are doing their trade. They are practicing their craft, and watching them go to town is something to watch. They don't get enough credit, and they're often the most quiet people. They come in, they take the stand. Sorry, guys. Oftentimes they're very nerdy and scientific. They are some of the hardest working and most critical people in all of law enforcement. And we know that from CSI, the TV shows and all that. But in real life, they really do make or break the case. So they're going through all the shoes. They're looking for clothes. What's interesting here, though, is we have an 11-day gap. And this guy was a vascular surgeon, right? So he's heard of DNA before. And he's got 11 days to clean things. But also, for the vast majority of murder,
do you think he took 11 days to clean things? I wonder if he took 11 days to clean things. We're going to keep going into a deep, deep, deep dive here today on Michael McKee.
It is the killer's first rodeo. And if you think about anything you've done for the first time, and you think about all the mistakes, especially, this is what's known as a DV double. Actually, it's a domestic violence double homicide. Again, assuming they got the right guy. And these tend to be incredibly brutal, incredibly bloody. And look, they're going to get into this guy's cell phone records and emails. And most importantly, I think his Google searches are going to be very interesting. The old adage is,
that's coming
there's no
up.
machine that can read your mind. Yeah. But but we really
You've touched on two topics, Matt. You've touched on two topics I'm literally about to do in the next 2 blocks. I can't wait though. I got to wrap it, but I can't wait to find out if when they called him, because I assume they'd call an ex-husband, if he gave an alibi that turned out to be wrong and a lie, because there's some rumor about that. And if he ever said the words, "I've never even been in that house," because that's just a, it's a chef's kiss for prosecutors if there's evidence of him in the house. Matt Murphy, thank you. As always, appreciate it.
I love the show. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, my friend. It stands to reason that a suspect's digital footprint is almost always bigger and more conclusive than his or her actual footprint, especially if they're left behind at a murder scene. And you would think that somebody working towards a doctorate in criminology would know that. Yes, Brian Koberger turned off his phone while killing 4 college students in their Moscow, Idaho home, but his phone pinged 23 different times at the murder scene in the weeks leading up to the killings. So what will phones and cameras and watches and GPS tell the police in Ohio about the murders now linked to an Illinois surgeon? My next guest has a pretty fair idea. Jennifer Coffendorfer is a retired FBI special agent, friend of the show, and has been doing a lot of research on this case. Last week, Jen, you joined me on the show, and you found that there was an inordinate spike in Google searches for the couple's home, and now before the murders. And now you have found even more Google searches before the murders and after the murders. So what have you found that's new before the murders?
Right before the murders, Dr. Tepe, he was actually Google searched as well in an inordinate amount of time. In other words, everyone's flatlined, and then all of a sudden he spikes in November 30th. So that tells me that somebody was really looking.
That's super interesting because a lot of people didn't even know his name before the arrest. So was he looking at himself like Brian Koberger was, wondering if they were onto him? That's so interesting.
Into what he was doing.
What about the after murder searches? What did you find has spiked after the murders?
So after the murders and immediately after the murders, Michael McKee spiked. Now, that makes some sense, right? People thought that that could be him, but it continued to spike throughout. And when we look at Brian Koberger, it's just such a mirror image of his spike pattern. Of course, that was in a time frame 5 weeks before anyone ever knew his name. I just found it very interesting. Was Michael McKee worried that people were looking at him, and so he was checking social media and so on?
Because it wasn't you and me. None of us actually had any idea that Mo Tepe had been married, a decade prior. And so we weren't Googling the name Dr. Michael McKee. Nobody in the true crime community really was doing that. So that is a fascinating find. Let me ask you this. The cops have put out the exact time that Mo and Spencer Tepe were murdered, and it's 3:52 a.m. How would they know the exact minute?
Well, I think that that's going to be based on the visual evidence from videotape that they have going in and coming out. So I think that's how they have the precise time. It could also be from his cell phone. Now, this is what I find interesting, though, is they would have geofenced this property right away. And I don't understand why they wouldn't have had his name prior to that, unless actually he had a burner phone. And if he did, that makes sense to me that they have a precise phone.
Any comments not on topic will be deleted. We are staying on topic. Thank you.
Time.
Here's what I'm thinking. It could be also a fitness tracker on any of the 3 of them, because the spike in the blood pressure and the heart rate at the time of the killings for all of them would have been through the roof. And so if any of them was wearing an Oura ring or an Apple Watch or anything like that, that could have shown. Or maybe there's just video somewhere that registered gunshots or sounds of gunshots. I have to leave it there because there's just so much information. Will you come back this week, Jen? Reaction to hearing that this neighbor of yours who you'd spoken with and thought was delightful has been arrested on 2 aggravated murders.
Yeah, it's really was a shock to the building and everything, because I met him really once. We really talked at the poolside, and that was during the summer shortly after he moved in. And we talked at the pool, and he was very friendly. We were all barbecuing at that time, and he did not seem like somebody that would be doing something like this. But like Ashley, like you point out, you don't know what is in a person's mind, what they're obsessing about, and what they're going through in their mind, and what causes them to react.
So Ashley here is interviewing one of his neighbors in the building. We're going to show that probably tomorrow, some inside pictures of his building, his apartment.
Like this, but I would see him and we would pass each other. I saw him last week, too, going by, and we would just say hi, how are you, hi, and that's it. We never really spoke after that. He was kind of a quiet person to himself, but it is shocking that a resident of this building was charged with such a terrible crime, and residents
I can't imagine. Can I ask you how did you all even find out? Like how did the news sort of spread through the building?
Well, I found out because there was Channel 7 crew that was outside there of our building trying to talk to residents. And I walked up to them because I used to work at Channel 7 in Chicago. I was an assignment editor. And I said, what's happening over here? What's going on? The doorman says you wanted to talk with me. And they told me about what was happening. And when they said Michael McKee, I said, well, I don't know if I know him. Show me a picture. And then they showed me the picture. And I went, oh my gosh, I know him. He's one of my neighbors. He lives two stories above me in the building here. And I said, why, my goodness, it was unbelievable that this man who was just so nice when I talked to him. And then, as I said, we would pass each other. This is a building of a lot of professional people, okay? And people that come in.
Speaking of that, I want to let, sorry to interrupt, Geraldine, sorry to interrupt, but I want to let our viewers know that when you say it's a building of professional people, that includes you. You're not only did you work at Channel 7 as an assignment editor, you're also a true crime author. So tell the audience what you did to take a peek 2 floors up where he lived and what you saw.
Well, I went upstairs and I saw a police officer sitting right in front of his door, guarding his place there. And I took a little video. I guess it's a newswoman in me. And I also took a picture of what his apartment looked like from the outside. And I just was surprised that there's a police officer on duty there 24 hours. And then I came up the next day and there, Lord and behold, I saw that there were now investigators there. And I went to get my car in the garage and there was an investigation van saying Crime Lab from Columbus. So that is something else that I videotaped right away. And the investigators going to the van. And when I went upstairs, I saw that they were taking boxes of stuff out of there and putting it in there. They had one box and they were putting stuff in there. You know what? It's a very circumstantial evidence thing. You have the digital stuff and so on, but you don't have the firing gun. You know what I mean? That's something that they're looking for. And I'm sure that they're also looking for any messages he had or drawings and things like that.
We're about to do a deep dive with investigators who do this for a living, who are going to run down the list of everything they probably looked for in that apartment and seized, as well as other places as well. But I'd like to just ask you in retrospect, we all look back at things and people when we learn something that's jarring, and then we think, okay, that now in retrospect, it's unusual. Was there anything about Dr. Michael McKee that was the least bit unusual or struck you as unusual in retrospect?
No, nothing struck me as being unusual. He was a business person coming in. We'd pass in the hallway. We'd be in the elevator and I'd say hi and he'd say hi. We were all tired from working and everything like that. But the building put out a memo to all the residents. And this is a memo and it says, good afternoon, residents. Due to an active police investigation involving a resident, you may see and encounter law enforcement officials in and around the building over the next few days. Now that is what alarmed a lot of residents.
Thank you for watching.
Wow, the fact that they saw him, he didn't surprise them, didn't surprise this woman is concerning, It's like the neighbor that the sheep in wolf's clothing, right? Like, wow, here we go. Here's another one.
It's with a case like this where an ex or someone in someone's past from so long ago comes back potentially and does this?
Unfortunately, yes, Ashley, this is not as rare as you would think in domestic violence cases and family law cases. Sometimes those go on for decades. We have husbands that stalk wives for nearly, like you see here, 9-10 years. And, with social media and the pictures, they fester, it boils, and, sometimes it ends up in the unfortunate tragedy like we see here.
Well, I'll tell you what, the pictures of Mo Tepe and Spencer Tepe, their wedding videos, their photographs, their, families, they have 2 little babies. I'm sure that there was a lot that they shared publicly with their beautiful life. But I am curious about establishing motive, because juries want it, even though prosecutors aren't required to give it. So at this point, is it going to be essential for investigators to go through every single potential message that Mo Tepe or Spencer Tepe may have had, or with Dr. Michael McKee, just the online connection potentially between them?
Absolutely. I think you're going to see a lot of development over the next couple weeks. This is only the beginning. Once we have an arrest warrant, law enforcement will go in there and they'll do a what we call a digital dump and a forensics on his computer. They will look at his Google searches. They will look at their Google searches. They will look at the text messages between them. They will look at social media. And yes, like you say, prosecutors don't have to show a motive, but it's always good to complete a story, and juries always want to know why.
Hey, listen, even if there was no communication between them for 10 years, there is the potential of cyber stalking. I mean, we just had, Jennifer Kovendorfer on saying that there were these big spikes in searches for the Tepe's house and big spikes in searches for Spencer Tepe all weeks before the actual murder. So is cyber stalking and even maybe, physical stalking, like Brian Goldberger did? He came to the murder house for months before the actual murders. Is that going to be critical in this investigation?
Yes, we are seeing an increase in cyber stalking now that we have everyone on social media living their best life, and we have exes and broken, people have broken hearts, and you can't underestimate the power of a broken heart and what that can lead to when you are, publicly living your life with your new boyfriend or wife or husband and your children. And so you see what can happen when this occurs with this ex-spouse,
Sure.
which is unfortunate.
I've got 10 seconds left, but are they going to be finding out about how potentially helpful Dr. McKee was? Because they will check an ex-husband before they arrest him. And if he wasn't telling the truth to them, but being very helpful, is there anything I can do to help? Or reaching out to the family, I'm so sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do to help? Will that matter?
Of course, everything matters. Anything he says, anything he does, his behavior from here on forward, his interviews. I think we're going to see a lot of developments over the next couple of weeks, and we've only seen the beginning.
Judge Tarlika Nunes Navarro, thank you so much. I always loved talking to you. I appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to get in now into a podcast that does, it's a lengthier video, and they do an amazing deep dive. An amazing deep dive. Let's watch. It's really interesting. Very interesting.
Today, the man accused of murdering Spencer and Monique Tepe walked into an Illinois courtroom quite arrogantly, I must say, with his head held high. And
whoops. What happened? What happened? Jeez. That's annoying. Okay, let's pull it up again. Sorry, everybody. I had it up. I don't know what happened.
today, the man accused of murdering Spencer and Monique Tepe walked into an Illinois courtroom quite arrogantly, I must say, with his head held high and chin up in the air. He waived extradition and is headed back to Columbus, Ohio to face 2 counts of aggravated murder. But who is Dr. Michael David McKee, and how does a respected vascular surgeon become the center of one of Ohio's most recent shocking double murders?
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, SDS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the global phenomenon. It's not a show. It's not a podcast. It is a global phenomenon that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today, obviously, following the big news, which is Dr. Michael McKee's first courtroom appearance, first of what will be many, again, waiving his right to extradition, and could be being transported back to Columbus, Ohio, as we speak. It was supposed to happen very quickly. And what I got from the hearing earlier on, which we'll likely play for you again since it was under 2 minutes, was that if he, for whatever reason, is not extradited back, there would be some sort of status conference hearing at 2:00 next week. But that is likely not to happen, at least not in Winnebago County, Illinois, but rather We'll probably have another hearing before then, I would imagine, in Columbus, Ohio. So without further ado, our best guest, and we've got some amazing best guests joining us today. Mark Weaver is a current prosecutor in the great state of Ohio. He is a former deputy attorney general for the great state of Ohio and was a former spokesman for the U.S. Department of Justice. Next up, got a little therapist action going on here with Darby Fox, a licensed family therapist, here to explain some of the psychology behind everything. Jeff Weninger, a retired lieutenant with the LAPD and also the author of On Thin Ice. He's on location at Clemson University, where he is going to be teaching a class. The man is in demand. He learned a lot in his 33-plus years at the LAPD. And last but certainly not least, a new favorite here at STS. Not only is he a nice guy, but he comes from the same police department that is in the process of investigating this case. He himself, Jay Fulton, a homicide detective, now retired with the Columbus PD. Welcome to one and all. And let's dive right into it. For full disclosure, I'm hopping on to Josh Ritter's podcast no later than 8:20. So I've got a hard out, as they say. And then Court TV, a busy night tonight, talking the Tepe murders. So I appreciate everybody being here. And we're going to get through plenty of what we need to get through. But Mark Weaver, let me start with you, a seasoned prosecutor. Aggravated charges, raised aggravated charges. These are more serious charges. I understand premeditation is part of this. What else goes into the word aggravated, especially in the state of Ohio?
Well, in Ohio, we have murder and we have aggravated murder. Murder is a first-degree felony, and aggravated murder is an unclassified felony. All that means is it's the most serious case that can be brought. In Ohio, cases like this are death penalty eligible, although aggravated murder does not always mean the death penalty. There has to be something other than just killing one person. Of course, we have that.
I looked up very briefly aggravated murder because I wanted to know if it could include anything to do with the kids. And I asked, could the additional aggravated charge be because he killed the parents in front of the two children? And ChatGTP, while the presence of the children at home is a significant detail in the investigation, it is not the primary legal reason the charges were upgraded. Under Ohio law, the aggravated status in this case is primarily based on premeditation and multiple victims, just in case anybody had any questions on that.
Here. One of the special circumstances, one of the aggravating circumstances that can take a case from standard murder to aggravated murder could be multiple victims, which we have here. Could also be during the commission of certain other felony offenses, which we don't have enough information here to know whether that's true. So the prosecutor will almost certainly bring aggravated murder. Whether or not she'll seek the death penalty, I tend to doubt. We don't have a lot of death penalty prosecutions in Franklin County, Ohio recently. Hamilton County, where Cincinnati is a little better known for bringing that. There's been some change in prosecutors in the big cities in Ohio recently, and so there's a different perspective on the death penalty. But aggravated murder can also bring about life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
And Mark, man, with your experience in the judicial system in Ohio, I'd be remiss if I just didn't ask you, kind of from bird's eye point of view, a guy that's just watching this. I mean, how stunning was this for you to watch play out? This has to be one of the more high-profile cases out of Ohio in recent years.
Yeah, big news in greater Columbus, Ohio, the home of the Ohio State University. That's the biggest city now in Ohio. A lot of people were wondering how a killer got inside without breaking in. And a lot of people were worrying and praying about these children who were present when these evil things happened and were safe. Thank the Lord, they were safe. I think some evidence may come out. I predicted this on Long Crime on an interview the other night. I think the evidence is going to come out that perhaps the killer actually took care to make sure they would be safe while he was in the house. But so a lot of people in greater central Ohio were talking about who would kill a couple that appear to have enemies, how did the killer get in, and goodness, are we glad that those children are alive, but what a horrible way to start your life with your parents murdered.
Yeah, appreciate that, Mark. Darby, to you, we'll just go around the horn here. We've got a therapist, we've got a prosecutor, we've got two amazing, I can't really call Jeff a detective, lieutenant, but I was berated by Phil Waters. There's a difference between investigators and detectives, but you get the point. But Darby, to you, a relative spoke to the New York Post, and here's the direct quote. It was absolutely not a shock to anybody. We had all expected it. We were all breathing a sigh of relief because they got him. They're obviously speaking about Dr. Michael McKee. People said the 911 calls seemed kind of off because they came in so quickly. These wellness checks came in so quickly after Spencer Tepe did not show up for work. And a few people said, well, we don't know all the circumstances. And now I guess we're learning that this relationship with Michael McKee was damaged badly early on. What do you make of this from, and we're talking about Michael McKee himself tonight. What do you make of this comment that it was not a shock to anybody?
So I think that's a pretty common finding, unfortunately. It seems that they were divorced 10 years prior. He obviously, which is typical of a domestic violence case, really had an in for her. And if other people in the community knew, such as the crime, I guess the 911 call went in that morning that the dentist didn't show up, which seems like they would have been on edge. Like, what could have happened here? People must have known she was scared, or she'd been threatened, or this was a pretty volatile relationship, because 10 years post divorce for the wife would seem like a long time thing. People typically would get over it. So, and we do know not a lot about his personality, but he is a surgeon. He's a highly skilled vascular surgeon. He can be pretty intense and focused, and many surgeons are very self-centered or narcissistic. I mean, that's all kind of a leap, but it goes with a strong personality that might have that kind of a complex.
Yeah, my father's a doctor, my uncle's a doctor, my brother-in-law's a doctor, my sister's a doctor, and there's a joke. What is the difference between God and a doctor? And that is that God does not know everything. That is a joke, everybody. But I use that with my mother. I use that with my mother, Darby Fox. I say, what's the difference between God and my mother? God does not know everything. However, Jeff Wenninger, to you, we got our first glimpse of him. We're looking at him in court. A lot of people don't believe the booking sheet where he's listed as 6'1", 200 pounds, I believe. They say he looks a lot bigger. You've had some time to digest it. I mean, there was a level of arrogance about him when he walked in, chin in the air, very stoic. What do you make of that, having a couple hours to sort of sit on it?
Well, I think it's consistent with the personality of somebody that would commit these type of heinous crimes, especially after being divorced for the period of time that he was. He clearly harbored some resentment, and I believe he has some sense of superiority. I'm sure he has some blame replacement and those sorts of things where he doesn't see himself. He sees himself actually as the victim, and that he, in his mind, is justified in some way in regards to the way he acted out. That's what tends to suggest to me the way he's carrying himself. I suspect that he would be difficult to rattle. I believe he thinks he's probably the smartest guy in the room, but when the detectives are doing some type of reading of his personality and trying to find the ways they can identify areas that he may be vulnerable, where they could get him to expose some of his inner thoughts and perhaps motivations, and why he would do something of this nature, that he may explain those sorts of things just to be understood, and let people believe that he's not actually the one at fault here.
Yeah, and Jay, I'll have you unmute and mute you guys. I'm sorry you have to keep doing that, Jay and Jeff. But here's a much earlier picture. He looks physically a little bit different. Obviously, the glasses, and he's a little more kempt in the, or maybe more unkempt in the mugshot. But, Jay, when you were on the show Saturday, when this arrest was happening, and we were bringing it to you live, the breaking news, Phil Waters, who's investigated 400 homicides, basically said, and you agreed with him at the time, this is a guy, and Jeff just said it, who probably thinks he's the smartest one in the room. What would your tactic be inside that interview room? I think Saturday you said something along the lines of just giving him enough rope to hang himself. You still stand by that?
I do. This is an individual that's controlled the narrative throughout his life. He's been at the top end, and he wants to be heard. The way to get him to talk, or a person of that nature to get him to talk, is let him talk about themselves. Let them air their grievances, and if not be sympathetic, certainly be neutral. If you come at this guy hard, or
just for the record, the gentleman speaking now was an officer in this exact area. He's retired now, so he knows this exact area.
Accusatory immediately, he'll shut down. He wants to be heard. I think the pictures in between, obviously the arrest put a lot of stress on him, but I think that's indicative of this spiral he's been going through. I mean, he looks certainly happy in the first picture, and then not only being arrested, but the stress of this unwinding of this perfect life has taken its toll on this gentleman.
And you just look into those eyes; they are dead eyes, at least in the mugshot. Not always, here on the right side, he looks like he does have life, and almost some charisma in him. Here's another photo that the COE was able to get, chief of everything for those who are new to the show. Mark Weaver, talk to us about, and we're going to, again, dig deeper into the divorce, what happened, why there was something that was flagged in 2025, but we also have to get to the big news today, and that is, again, his initial court appearance where he waived extradition, and an attorney for him said he will eventually enter a not guilty plea. What are the next steps, Mark Weaver, once he gets back to Columbus, Ohio?
Well, it's interesting that he waived extradition. He didn't have to do that. He could have slowed the whole process down and required the state of Ohio prosecutors to make the case about why the case should come from Illinois to Ohio. So he didn't. That's mildly interesting. Nobody should read anything into a not guilty plea. Nobody, well, first of all, you can't plead guilty to the death penalty. That's not possible. And nobody pleads guilty at this early stage. Even if you're guilty and planning on pleading guilty, nobody pleads guilty. So of course he's going to plead not guilty. He has the means. I can only presume a vascular surgeon has the means to hire very competent and experienced defense team. And there are several good defense lawyers in Columbus who could do that. And then he has to decide what his plan is, right? I don't do defense work, but I've worked with a lot of defense lawyers. And the plan is either going to be, we're going to try to make them prove it and try to muck up or otherwise trip up the prosecution on a loophole, kind of like what Alec Baldwin did, who clearly shot a woman and killed her. And he just brought in a lot of expensive lawyers and found a mistake in the paperwork and got the case dismissed. That's sort of the one option. Let's take this to trial. Let's see if we can get an acquittal. The other one is to tell them to go bargain. Listen, I want to get out in my 70s. And so go bargain, reduce this down to something, an agreed upon sentence. Or he's going to say, I didn't do it. I'm completely innocent and I want you to go prove that at trial. The defense lawyer doesn't have to prove that, but I've seen defendants take that approach before. So he's coming back to Ohio. He'll have a private lawyer. There will be an arraignment. There'll be a preliminary hearing. And then the discussion between the defense lawyer and the prosecutor's office will begin about how this case is going to resolve.
Yeah. And Mark, can we see, or should we expect a superseding indictment? Someone was also asking, what about endangering the welfare of children? Are we going to see more charges added on as we go here, Mark?
Yeah, the charges that are filed now are not been filed by a grand jury. They're simply holding charges. Any police official with probable cause can file a charge with the clerk of courts, and in municipal court, which is the lower of the two trial courts in Ohio, will hold that. Under Ohio law, every felony must be brought forward by an independent grand jury of citizens who live in that county. And those indictments are the actual charges that are brought. So there's not been an indictment yet. We wouldn't need a superseding indictment. The grand jury will either very quickly charge him or might want some more evidence to be able to develop, as you mentioned, other charges. Were there other crimes that took place? Frankly, the endangering children charge is the least of this guy's worries. 2 aggravated murders is enough if stacked, if served consecutively. He'll never leave prison short of a pardon if he's convicted on both.
Now, I want to point out that Jeff Weninger is a natural specimen of a human being before I bring this comment up. And the question, because this keeps coming up over and over, and I like to answer the questions, but the question is, could he be, and we go to Darby too, could he be on steroids? And when you look at these photos here is he, and granted, this is.
I mean, you ladies were asking that yesterday. You were all yesterday asking, is this guy on steroids? Because look at him. He definitely is the definition of a box head.
Years ago, but this is him and Monique, probably dating back close to 10 years. This is him on a boat right here. And he looks much smaller. And then you go to him in court today. Jeff Weninger, I mean, you were basically a professional hockey player for all intents and purposes, minus your injuries. Does this guy look like a guy to you that might be juicing and could be dealing with roid rage? I don't want to set off the rumor mill, but a lot of people are asking about that.
I wouldn't like to speculate on that, actually. I mean, bottom line is I was an athlete, but if you compare me now to what I looked like 10 years ago, I'm much heavier, and someone might accuse me of being on steroids, which I'm not. But at the end of the day, I mean, he is a large guy, but I don't see any muscle development that would, in my mind, that would be consistent with anything that would identify steroid use. But I can see why someone would think so. But typically, that roid rage scenario, it's more like in the moment. Somebody ticks you off and you act out
saying the guy is a natural specimen. And I can attest to the fact it gets a little harder to stay in shape as you get older. That is for damn sure. But Darby Fox, the other question that just comes up.
I just want to take the time to say thank you to everybody that's new. Re-hit 5,500 subscribers last night. Do all the YouTubey things, please, and thank you.
Obviously in the marriage, which is why they got divorced. But if the marriage ends in 2017 and now we're in 2016, why so long? Could this guy have been brewing and stewing for that long, Darby?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't really think there's any doubt that that's what it is. There's something about the relationship, and certainly someone telling.
Listen up. This starts to get very interesting, y'all. This starts to get really interesting. We reported it here, but we couldn't conclusively say. We reported there was additions made. Listen up to their divorce. Interesting stuff coming up.
Him know that he did not like and never settled with him. For it is very abnormal to come back that much later when he, as we've said, is a successful, he's got a surgeon's career. He lives in a different state. There weren't previous children that they shared. So it would seem like he would just move on and he would be a powerful man and just like find someone else. Something about a domestic violence cycle where he had an in for her, and her happiness was probably what really set him off. And it took him a certain amount of time. It just kept brewing. And we don't have the actual background yet to know, but there was something there that he didn't let go. And that is common of someone that would be capable of a double murder like this, particularly with two small children in the other room.
And Joel, there's a clue here.
Yep.
You sent me this document, so I looked at it.
Yep.
Maybe other people could see it, but I can see it as a lawyer. Look at the top of the document.
Hey, COE, can we bring that up? Can you please pull that up?
Yeah, we're seeing it now.
Oh, we're looking. Okay, this is it. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want everybody at home to look at the top of the document. It says defendant. And in Ohio, we call a divorce where there's no children involved typically a dissolution, but it has the same effect as a divorce. So there's a dissolution attempt. He's the defendant, which means she brought the action. He's living in Virginia, which means he.
So up in the top left corner here, the defendant, Michael McKee, keep listening because he makes some great points.
Is moved out of the state. And if you move if everybody looks to the right of defendant, it says attorney, Michael McKee. That means he's pro se. That's Latin for on your own. So these are little clues we can use to suggest that she was the one who wanted the divorce.
Up at the
He's
top.
now living in Virginia. He didn't want to get a lawyer. He could afford a lawyer, right? Got to imagine he could, no matter what kind of surgery or doctor he was, he could afford $2,000 for a local lawyer to help him deal with that. So those are some clues that would suggest that this divorce was her doing.
Yeah, and I'm very glad, and this is why Mark is here. So she basically is the catalyst for the divorce. COE, do we have the 2025 document? Now, everyone has asked, well, there was something from, this is it. Okay, so in 2025, something comes, it's hard for me to read this. The yellow arrow is a relocation notice, Mark. What is this in 2025? Would there have to be, apparently he moves into a new condo, which is right here from this is the new condo. He moves in on the lake in Chicago, right on the lake in Lincoln Park, which is a beautiful neighborhood. Is this documentation here suggesting that he was supposed to give some sort of notice to the court when he moved within a certain distance of Monique Tepe? That's what we're trying to figure out. What this 2020.
That's got nothing to do with a protection order. A relocation notice has to do when there are children between the couple, and the judge has to make arrangements for child visitation and or custody to be done between those two places. So it looks like there's an N next to relocation.
If you're just coming in, we started early today because I have to be somewhere early this afternoon. My apologies. You might want to go back and rewind the first hour if you're just coming in now.
Notice, which I'm not a divorce lawyer. I've done about a dozen divorces in my career, but I'm happily not doing them. I'd rather prosecute child rapists and murderers than do divorces, frankly. But what I can glean from that is that's the standard form where if Mary and Bob were getting divorced and they had children, if Bob was going to relocate somewhere, the judge would have to make accommodations for what becomes of the children's visitation or joint custody if we have parents in two different states.
Okay, now if you look where it says docket, and again, sorry to the other guest for belaboring this for a minute, but we got flagged by so many people about this. The docket.
Okay, look at this. What he's referring to in this picture is the docket where there's actually June 18th, 2025, the filing date, June 17th, 2025. We reported it here, but we didn't have confirmation that there was a case reopening from their divorce, an addition made to their file in 2025. Well, there's a courtroom location and a court time of 9 a.m. on September 26th, 2025. Just months before this murder. What was this about? Let's listen in and see if they have any answers.
Yeah, you can see the dates. They're all in 2025. I guess the bottom line question, back to Mark for just 1 second on this, if you'll indulge me, is why, after being divorced in 2017, is something popping on a docket in 2025 related to the dissolution of their marriage, I guess? I just don't get it.
Yeah, that is, first of all, this is the first, I've talked to some reporters about this. You're the first one to point this out, and I think it is worthy discussing. Again, I told you I did some divorces in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Non-child divorces, where there are no kids involved, are rather simple. There's no child custody question, there's no child support question, and there's no child visitation. It's all about division of property, and sometimes about what people call alimony, which is really spousal support. But I raise that to say it happens easily and quickly. And the fact that now Mr. Tepe got married tells us that the divorce was granted. The notion of the case having any action in years later, any action in 2025 suggests that there has been contact between them and that somebody is asking the court to take some sort of step to enforce something from the original decree, if you will.
Suggests that there has been contact between them and somebody's taking a step to enforce the original decree. Was he stalking Monique and Spencer Tepe? Was he stalking them?
It's very odd. I see this in child custody cases all the time, or child support. Bob doesn't get the custody of the kids. Mary gets custody of the kids. And 5 years later, Bob finds out Mary's on drugs. So Bob goes to the court and asks for a hearing so that we can learn about Mary's drug habit, and Mary won't be the custodial parent anymore. So you expect a court to be alerted later when there's child issues ongoing. But a couple who breaks up with no children, typically they go their own ways, never to meet again. So clearly they have. I mean, and investigators are better ones to talk about this than I am. But as I mentioned on Law and Crime the other night, I can only think of 3 ways to get into a house in the middle of the night. Either you break in and they say there's no forced entry, or you have the code. They say it was a code, kind of a lock, or someone has let you in. I don't know of any other ways to get into the house. And so what that suggests is if there's no forced entry, he either has the code and got in because he didn't guess it, or he was allowed in, which is very odd in the middle of the night. And this data point that you have up on the screen, I think, is probably connected to that.
Interesting. So everyone, this is a very important document, and you can tell here, this is a former Deputy Attorney General of Ohio, and he's taken some best guesses at it, not to be confused with best guess, but someone here is saying maybe it has something to do with custody of assets. And the reason it's come up, we're a pet-friendly show here, everybody. Maybe custody of the dog. I don't know.
So the divorce couldn't be granted until all the issues are resolved. That's the nature of divorces. Judges or magistrates will not issue a divorce decree until the two people have finished all their business, if you will. Again, I've had to quarrel with opposing counsel on some of these divorces. What about the toaster? What about this? What about the other? Until that's all resolved, you can't even get in front of the judge to get a decree granted.
Yes, but their divorce was finalized in 2017, and now there's some additional notes added to it. She started the divorce process in 2015. It was finalized in 2017. And 8 years later, in 2025, there's additional notes to it. I suspect we'll hear more on this as this court case, assuming he continues to plead not guilty, continues.
Yeah. So, Jay Fulton, you're a retired detective in this very jurisdiction, the Columbus Police Department. How important is it for you to figure out here what this document is about and why it looks like something was docketed from their divorce proceedings now in it looks like September, or like my eyesight's going and it's impossible to see, but roughly September of 2025. I mean, Jay, how do you get to the bottom of this? I guess detectives are much better than journalists because I know you're going to get a straight answer from someone, but how?
Well, you're going to track this. You're going to track down the magistrate and see what he was pro se. So you don't have a lawyer that would probably shoot straight with you. But he had his own personal reasons for doing this. Whether he's just doing this because he wants to stir the pot. He's stirred. And so how can she won't take my phone calls anymore. She's changed her number. She's not answering. She hangs up. So how can I make her respond? Well, the courts are often used by couples separating as a cudgel on the other party. And it's because the court has to do what the court has to do. Frivolous filings will guarantee, I can't get her to respond to me, but a frivolous filing is going to ensure that she has to, because the court's going to make her. Whether this is based on any property that ever existed, any perceived slight, she's not responding to his attentions now at this point. And he's not a dumb guy. So he knows one way to ensure that she's at least got to respond to the court is I can control her by making her have to run down to court to answer to me. And I think that would be a way he could increase the stress on her and the discomfort on her. And I think that was the target of this. It's probably based on nothing other than his animosity towards her and her new relationship.
Yeah, and to Mark Weaver's point, Jenna Ken asking, wasn't the divorce official? Yeah, by all means, it was official, but obviously something got triggered in September of this past year, and maybe that's what set this guy off. We're trying to figure out what that is in real time. And I always apologize to the guests. I'm sorry when we have four. I'd love to give everyone a lot of time, and I'm doing my best here. But Mark Weaver had some answers on this document that was docketed fairly recently. But Jeff Weninger, and then back to Darby after that. We're doing a whole show here with the thumbnail digging deeper on Dr. McKee, and we're looking at this record. But how important is it for detectives to dig deeper on Michael McKee as well? What are they doing in terms of putting together a biography of this guy?
Well, first, I'd like to say that I believe that this perhaps was actually the trigger. And if you look at the evidence of what we know, Spencer, he had multiple rounds. He appears to have been the target. And yes, his wife was also the target, but there may have been some circumstance where Spencer was stepping in for his wife to address some of these issues of what they perceived as harassment from the ex-husband. And that would have infuriated the ex-husband even more, and then wanting to target Spencer. And that's why we see multiple rounds to Spencer and only one round to Monique. But the reality is you've always have the open source stuff. That's going to be the social media, chat rooms, all those sorts of things. You always have the human aspect, where you're going to be talking to colleagues, friends, family, anybody that knew this individual in any way, shape, or form is going to be interviewed. And then it's the technology, and it's the technology of the cameras and those sorts of things that brought us to where we are today. But it's exhaustively going through those three areas that is going to bring you the information that you're going to need to successfully prosecute this case. But I do believe that Jay is spot on relative to.
They're going to keep deep diving into his business career, which also had some alarm bells. Keep listening.
The thoughts in this proceeding in the family court, and the wanting to take control or assert some level of control over Monique. And my guess is that Spencer did what many husbands would do, would step in to try to protect. And rather than her engaging in that communication in which the ex-husband wanted, it was Spencer, which then probably escalated things.
Yeah, that's an excellent explanation. And Philly shoulder surgeon, COE, if you can put that back up. But Darby, to you, the question was essentially, could it have been, apparently he was having trouble passing his board certified exams and was maybe doing something with varicose veins instead of something else that he wanted to do as a vascular surgeon. Could the trigger for this have been, for lack of a better way to say it, failures at work that now made him that much more contemptuous towards his ex-wife?
I don't know absolutely, but what typically would happen, I would say no. I would say a man of this power, or woman, he just happens to be a man, is their ego is so strong and they only see themselves. And as we talked about his courtroom appearance today, he seemed like he was really a little bothered and above everybody that he was there. That kind of person is not going to have sort of a missed board certification or something and feel kind of like, okay, now I'm going to go get Monique. I don't think that is his mindset. I think he's probably had this in the mind since she filed for divorce, and she did file for divorce to him. That's a very hard thing to swallow if you're someone with that kind of a mindset. It's like, I will get you. And it's taken a certain amount of time to get there is what is a more typical psychological profile.
Yeah, I mean, Darby, can you think of a recent example where, an ex exacts revenge 9, 10 years later? I feel like it's always sort of heat of the moment, like the divorce goes south, there's a custody, whatever it is, and then the crime is carried out. I can't think of anything that's as delayed as almost a decade long.
I don't, and typically the pattern is even in very contentious divorces, and I work with lots of them as a therapist or a parenting coordinator. It typically, once we get through the major stuff and the financial arrangement, people move on. And I don't know of any that are this far out. Usually it could be right when they get a ruling or as soon as someone engages in another significant relationship, but it's not typically this far out. It shows he's unstable. I mean,
well, that's for sure. Yeah. I always say in news, other people's misfortune sometimes propels people in news, and because of the story, it's bittersweet. But we've gotten a lot of new viewers. So for those who are not familiar, Surviving the Survivor. My mother's a child Holocaust survivor. She hosts the show on Fridays. She's the oldest true crime podcaster. We do a live show Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, usually with 3 panelists. But we've got the best guests in true crime, and I don't brag. That's not a tagline. That is the reality. Ask people in the genre. They know. They know. If you know. Fridays, again, I do a show with my mother, much more lighthearted. We still do true crime. Then we carry trials. We're bringing you the au pair trial with Tim Jansen tomorrow. And we bring you live hearings and breaking news coverage like we just did with the Tepes here. Now, this is the complaint for divorce. Back to Mark Weaver, who's made it clear that he's not a divorce attorney, has only handled a few. But plaintiffs here state that 0 children were born as an issue of this marriage. The plaintiff is not currently pregnant. That's just to say they had no kids, and she wasn't on her way to having kids. They're living separate and apart. The plaintiff states that the parties are incompatible. That is coming from Monique Tepe. My question to you, Mark, by all accounts, this guy is squeaky clean outside of stepping up to a double homicide. I don't, the old proverbial, I don't even know if he's had a parking ticket. What do prosecutors do, if anything, with that to try to get some sort of leverage or perhaps some sort of plea deal from that?
Before I answer that question, I just found another clue when you put that up on the screen. You noticed it said complaint for divorce. That tells me that Monique chose the divorce route, not the dissolution route. Remember earlier I said in Ohio, when you don't have kids, typically it's going to be a dissolution. And it's only rarely will it be a divorce. It's the same result. You're not married at the end. But here's what's important. You can't get a dissolution unless both parties agree on everything. And so that's one of the rules of dissolution. It happens quicker, can't have kid issues, and everybody has to agree on all points. So she's the plaintiff. We know that. That means she wanted it. He's living out of state in Virginia at the time, not Illinois. And it had to be a divorce, which means he was not agreeing to it. And one of my colleagues, I think, was a very smart thing.
So he's tapping into the facts according to the document. They had to go the divorce route instead of the dissolution route, which means he was contesting it, which we've already reported here.
Colleagues just mentioned that when you can't get somebody to react to you, if you've got that stalker mentality, filing something with the court forces them to show up. And the fact that the court has docketed it doesn't mean there's any truth to it. The court has to docket it, and the court has to schedule some form of a hearing, if only to see what's up. And so the next step for journalists should be to find the filing that this man made to trigger, you'll pardon the bad reference, but to trigger the hearing that was scheduled earlier, I guess 4 months ago in late 2025.
COE, I know you're going to be on that for sure. Yes, this is great insights. I said we've got the best guests in true crime. You're getting great panels here. Look at this from Abby Crossing, friend of mine, friend of the show's. Won $100 on a scratcher today, paying it forward. Grateful for you. Abby Crossing strikes me as the last person on earth I would ever think does like scratch off games. But now that I know she does, I'm going to start doing them as well. Virginia is for lovers. I don't know where that's coming from, but there you go. That is the famous old slogan. What do we have here? Okay, so here's some more background that I have here in my notes, and then we're going to get back to Jeff and Jay. So he is 39 years old, born in 86. As we know, a vascular surgeon. I guess he's on the cusp of turning 40. His undergrad degree is from The Ohio State University. His medical degree in 2014 is from The Ohio State University. He held active medical licenses in Illinois and California, previously licensed in Nevada, trained and worked in Virginia, Maryland, Nevada, California, most recently tied to the Rockford, Chicago area. Medical licensing databases show no disciplinary history, no known criminal record outside of traffic tickets. He once held an Ohio hunting license. The current status of that is unclear. And in Clark County, Nevada, home to Las Vegas, court records list him in a pending personal injury lawsuit involving multiple physicians. I'm sure someone is vetting that out as well.
A pending lawsuit. So there's a lawsuit going on, and keep listening. Keep listening.
Jeff, and then Jay. But Jeff, who do you need to speak to in this guy's orbit? I mean, he's been all over the place. He's down in Virginia. He's out in Las Vegas, Rockford, Illinois. I mean, how many people can you track down and speak to?
Well, I mean, his exposure to all kinds of different types of relationships, and I don't mean intimate relationships. I just mean relationships in regards to friendships or family members and those sorts of things, or colleagues are quite vast. You're talking about 10 years from the time that they got divorced. And actually, I want to know prior to that, because the one thing that we do have in common is that all three of these individuals went to the Ohio State. Now, Spencer was 2 years younger than Monique, and
another point being made, the three of them went to Ohio State University together. But keep listening, because there's something else about this Dr. David McKee you're going to want to know. Fascinating.
I won't even say his name, the defendant here. But, at the end of the day, you kind of wonder, did they all know each other? And the fact that Monique ended up with Spencer, perhaps if they knew each other, that may have been part of the equation relative to why this would have escalated. And I see that if he was struggling perhaps to pass his board, I don't see that the failure to pass the board would be why he.
So he has failed to pass the board exam, and his actual board exam license was revoked. The expiration date, license issue date, June 30th, 2016. License effective date, July 1st, 2015. He was a varicose vein doctor because his medical license to practice any other kind of vascular surgery was revoked and had been revoked for years. Keep listening.
He then began to spiral downward. I would see it conversely the other way, that he has been spiraling for a while, and it had just escalated to the point where now it was starting to impact other areas of his life, which made it difficult for him to perform in his testing and stuff to be certified. I think to me that just may demonstrate how over time he was spiraling worse, and it was impacting him in other areas of his life, and then ultimately.
Somebody in the comments is saying, Joel, this is his training license during his residency. This would not be his license as an attending surgeon. But apparently he was not able to pass the board exams, just like the LSAT exams, to be a full vascular surgeon, hence why he was working varicose veins. Not to say that's not accomplished, but probably not what he was setting out to do when he left medical school.
He acted out in the way he did.
Philadelphia shoulder surgeon, longtime friend of the show, with us for the Ellen Greenberg story, always with us. COE Joel, that is obviously she is a medical doctor handling, as you guys guessed it, shoulders. That is his training license during his residency. This would not be his license as an attending surgeon, and I don't think it shows here. Reports are that he's not board certified, which means that he can't practice in some of the areas that he might want to practice in, and that's why maybe he was dealing with varicose veins. And if I was dealing with varicose veins, I would, lose my mind in my own way, but not by a double homicide. Abby Crossing from Judy Herbert. I'm a huge Tennessee Titans fan, and I match it. Wow. Judy, thank you so much. Judy's incredibly generous. She wrote to us and has a really interesting background. I can't really reveal it until I get permission from her, but she has a fascinating background, as do most people here at STS Nation. I always say best guess, better community. Darby, back to you. We have the video, but we're not going to get it in time. Monique is speaking during her wedding vows. You can find it on YouTube. And she says to the small gatherings that happens during the pandemic, and it's in their living room where this crime occurred. She says, and I quote, "I had quite a journey to get to you," meaning to her husband, Spencer. "Countless bad bumble dates, wrong relationships, and waterfalls of tears." Now, we watched that prior to the arrest many times. And, you always, not always, 9 out of 10 times someone is coming to you, they've been in some sort of wrong way relationship. Now, when you listen to it, it takes on a much heavier context that she was in wrong relationships. I mean, how do you read that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how you would read it. And I do think maybe because of the timing with the marriage, that the numerous bad bumble dates I'm not sure. I mean, it's a great theory. I think you definitely have to figure out, did she know this guy at Ohio State? Were they just an acquaintance? Is that how they connected? Like on a Bumble screen where they both, Ohio State. So they decided that was a great connection. It's a little unclear, but it does seem like she'd been through a lot, is in her vows, are implying I've been through a lot to find the right man.
Yeah, for sure. There's a question here, Mark, that I think I can answer just as a host. And the answer is no. Will he get bail? Is there any circumstance in the world where a guy accused of double homicide, especially aggravated, is going to get out of jail pending a trial, Mark Weaver?
He's entitled to a bail hearing. I don't know any judge who would, in this case, grant a low bail. I mean, they may grant a high bail, several $1 million. One of the reasons you can withhold bail in Ohio is if the person's a danger to community. And ironically, this person is probably not a danger to the community. That's no reason why he should be let out. His anger appears to be focused on one person, but the flight risk is so high. That's the hard thing, because he is facing essentially life in prison or perhaps the death penalty. It's the flight risk that keeps him from getting any kind of bail that would let him out.
Do you all think they're going to go for the death penalty in this case? Let me know if you think they're going to go for the death penalty in this case. Yes or no? Welcome in, Hope. No worries.
I have to say, and again, I'm just going to put this out there. The COE will yell at me. Thank you for your coverage. I'm also covering this case. There are some questions. There are more questions than answers. That's usually the case, but thank you. And Allison Good, I bet he guessed the alarm code, and it might have been their anniversary or family birthday. That's possible. But Darby here, this has come up over and over. I have not independently been able to confirm this, but so many people have reached out to say this guy was adopted. So as a hypothetical, in a hypothetical situation, is some...
Do you think he had abandonment issues because he was adopted? I haven't heard that for sure, but they're running with it that people are saying he was adopted. I mean, I think maybe it's a stretch, but listen to this, because it's a thing for people who are adopted. Did that add some complexity to his feeling abandoned by Monique?
Someone who is adopted more likely to experience abandonment issues. I mean, I know a lot of people who are adopted, and they are beautiful human beings. Yeah, Jeff Weninger is one of them. Great people. This is obviously no reason to go and kill two people, but might he, if this is the case, if it is true, may he have felt abandonment as a result?
Absolutely. And it isn't that abandonment issues couldn't come up with any child, depending on how they were raised. But if there were issues with the adoption or issues with his adopted parents, and then he would tend to think, okay, I'm always being abandoned. I'm never quite good enough. And further down the road, we don't know his history, but clearly there was something about Monique that she abandoned him too, and he wasn't going to take that. And that's clearly sort of the motive. So, in and of itself, would that be an abandonment issue? Not necessarily. There are many amazing adoptive families where that wouldn't come up, but there's clearly something in his background. And we also know something's off because you don't hold that kind of a intense grudge for 10 years without, he was still trying to find a way to get her. It seems like that entire time. And the family knew that, friends knew that, or they wouldn't have called. I mean, it was the holiday season. So if a professional, a dentist, doesn't show up at work during the holiday seasons, it's not that likely that someone would be making a 911 call if they weren't in the office until a little later in the morning. I don't think.
Getting some comments from people who've been adopted. I was adopted. I have abandonment issues. I face them head on. Good for you, man. Johnny on the spot. And Canine Catherine, I think, just said that. I did not know that. And I've known her for years. Jeff, I just want to, this is very personal. I don't want to put you on the spot in any way unless you care to comment on this.
No, I'll comment on it. I was adopted, and I also have a brother who's half Japanese who's adopted. And we often say that we won the adoption lottery. Our parents were wonderful, and the opportunities that they provided us were unbelievable. And but later in our lives, my father, he was terminally ill, and he said, "I don't know if you understand this, but in the state of Ohio, they've changed some legislation, and you have a right to get some identifiable information." And I never had any interest in meeting my parents. I never even thought about it. But I thought, well, I'll reach out because I'd like to say thank you and let my mother know that I turned out okay. At least I think so. And so I did, and I've met her, and I've got 3 half siblings, and my brother actually met his birth mother as well, and he has 3 half siblings. But they don't replace our family. They're not our family. We don't have any experiences being raised with them. I've never had an abandonment issue whatsoever. My mother passed away from glioblastoma, which is a very significant brain cancer, and it takes you pretty quickly. She died when I was 16, and that was traumatic to me. So if I had abandonment issues, it was dealing with the trauma of losing my mother, who I was so close to at the age of 16. And yes, I think that impacted the relationships that I had. I didn't get married until very late in life, and it's because I kept relationships at an arm's length, because I didn't want to lose somebody else that I cared for. And so I think it took me a long time to understand that. But in regards to being adopted, absolutely no abandonment issues whatsoever.
Wow. And is your brother, is he older or younger than you?
He's younger than I am.
Younger.
And
wow.
he has I met my birth father. He's passed. My birth mother's still alive, but I did meet my birth father. My brother, he met his birth mother, but not father.
And when you told your birth mother and father, if you were able to, that you were a lieutenant in the LAPD, what was their reaction? I'd be proud.
I mean, they were kind of, impressed. It's kind of interesting. When I met my mother, I can't say I was expecting to have some type of connection. I just didn't. From the minute I laid eyes on her, there just wasn't anything there. My father, on the other hand, it all made sense. We are cut from the same cloth. We thought alike. We had very similar careers. He's my dad. It made sense.
Wow. Places that you will go during STS, you never know. But thank you for sharing that, Jeff. I'll have you re-mute there because of the audio glitch. I appreciate it. January, I did not know this, is National Stalking Awareness Month, NSAM, an annual call to action to recognize and respond to the serious crime of stalking. We should do something on this.
Yeah, I'm thinking now that I learned that as well, we'll do a deep dive on stalking here sometime before we end this case, for sure.
And I had no idea until right about now. The COE giving me a hard out in 20 minutes, but we still have plenty of time because I can get a lot in there. Jay Fulton, and then we'll go back around the horn. Michael McKee, financial snapshot here. When he was in the Virginia hospital system, I guess as a resident, he was making $51K a year. At that time, his wife, whose maiden last name is Sabatursky, Monique Sabatursky, she was working with Nationwide. Income growth went from 32K to 35K to 41K, bonuses of 10,000, real estate. The property they owned in Virginia, which ultimately was given, or, the share was, however they did it legally, was given over to Michael McKee. That was valued at $219,500. Vehicles, just to give you guys, this is everything that we've been coming up with. A Jeep and a Toyota RAV, two Jeep Grand Cherokees and a Toyota RAV. While the divorce actually shows at the end of the day here, no custody fights, no DV, no chaos. That's important. Jay Fulton, one of the things that is revealed here in these divorce documents from 2017, there was no reports of domestic violence or even domestic violence allegations, but it appears she wanted out, and she wanted out quickly. The marriage wasn't, the dissolution didn't happen for 2 years, but she was apparently out of the marriage for all intents and purposes after 7 or 8 months. But what does it tell you that there was no DV reported in that period of time?
Well, I think everybody on this panel realizes that that's not always something that is reported. So that's a possibility there. This may be, this is me surmising, but this is maybe Monique's holding out a carrot here. If you just go along with this and let me go, she's not out to ruin him. She's not out to challenge his medical license. That's if there was violence, or if there was that type of thing in the home, that is certainly a card that she could have played at some point during this proceeding. The fact that she didn't either means that there wasn't, or she was trying to take the high road on that. She just wanted away. And instead of holding his feet to the fire on something like that, that would have definitely pushed the issue forward in a more rapid fashion. She didn't want to damage his career. She was trying to maybe take the high road, if you will, and that didn't work out.
Someone here in the comments, and this is no truer statement has ever been stated here, but emotional abuse cannot be reported. I think that is, Darby, what about that? Can emotional abuse be reported?
Yeah, you can actually report all kinds of emotional abuse, and it's documented every day in especially contentious divorces. However, there isn't always a lot you can do about it because, and anybody there is more of an expert than I, but it's hearsay.
I just want to make a comment here over the comment on the screen, which I would concur. He killed her, so yeah, there was DV. Not much to say to that. Right? Factual.
Okay. If I say you did that, I would have to have proof. So emotional abuse is often much more damaging, but it is very hard to have a criminal charge on something someone says to you. And I believe while she could have been taking the high road, she could also be scared to death and say, I just want to get out. I'm going to leave you alone. Leave me alone. I've got to walk away. And so it could be the high road, but given the way that her life was ended, I might think she was scared to death and said, let me just move on. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. I'm just going to get out of this.
That sounds like a really likely scenario. One, I guess it's not obvious, but definitely a possibility here. Gloria says she bought her own engagement ring and wedding ring. We had that on Saturday, that news, and it was interesting to see that she was purchasing that. And we just saw that he was making about 50 grand a year as a resident, which is not an overly high salary and resident. And you put in all that time, and generally doctors have a ton of, loan payments. So they're in debt a bit. Darby, I just want to go back to you. You just look at his face. I don't want to say that there's any glee there. It's just like almost like a blank stare. But some people say he appeared satisfied at his initial hearing. Someone who's capable of doing this, what do you think is their mindset at a first appearance like this? I mean, do you think he feels justified in what he did in his own demented, depraved mind?
I don't know if I would say justified. I feel satisfied might be more appropriate. Like, I don't care. It's done. I did what I did. And there, if you look at his face, it's fairly vacant, right?
He's definitely not speaking in court, and he's pleading he's asserted his right to remain silent because the attorney, as we watched at the beginning of this, spoke on his behalf. He's not wearing a suicide vest. He looks very vacant in the eyes. I would say he's not going to show any remorse to this killing at all. That's just what I'm guessing going forward. He's not going to contest it. He's got a Brian Koberger God complex here. Just my opinion.
Those eyes are pretty intense, and he's not really engaging in the world around him. And I don't think he really, frankly, cares.
We addressed this, by the way. I'm going to address it again. Hope you apologize to the dental office for making it seem I never, ever, if you go back and watch a tape, ever made it seem like he had something to do with it. We all talked about the curiosity of the call. And I said it on the show yesterday. I said it earlier today, and I'll say it again, that our condolences go out to the family, and it goes out to the dental office where Spencer Tepe worked. I'm going to get to that site in one moment. But people were questioning, and guys like Jeff Wenninger and Jay Fulton, who are one is a detective, the other a lieutenant in the LAPD, are thinking of every single scenario. At one point, Jeff even suggested maybe it was a murder-suicide, and the kid was able to hide a toy gun, or the real gun, in a toy chest. So we were going over every possible scenario. I made it a point each and every time to say that we were not pointing the finger at them. And now, as we said in the earlier shows, we said that there would likely be context that came out. And knowing this, it seems pretty apparent that the people at the dental office knew that the guy you're looking at on the screen had an issue with Monique and maybe vice versa. And so they knew a lot more than we knew. And I want to be extremely clear about that. We try to be responsible here at Surviving Survivor. Not everyone is. And I try to be responsible running the show here with the great team that we have. So, Mark, here are your adversaries below you. We've got the retired LAPD lieutenant, and then you've got homicide detective Jay Fulton. They work side by side, but the defense attorneys, they're the adversaries. What are defense teams, the defense lawyer who's ultimately hired here, what are they going to do early on to exploit the work of the police? And by all accounts right now, it seems like the Columbus PD has done an amazing job. But what are they going to come out of the gates with here? You just have to unmute yourself, Mark. I'm sorry.
How about that? Am I unmuted now?
You're good. You're good. You are good.
The process of exchanging information between the two sides is called discovery, and prosecutors are required to give over nearly, not all, everything they have, including all the data, including statements. Particularly, they're required to turn over what's called Brady material, which is anything that might be exculpatory. And then the defense lawyers dig into that, trying to find a mistake, trying to find a procedural problem. If they have a procedural problem, they will file pretrial motions to exclude evidence, which could lead to the case being dismissed. We've not talked about it, and I have no inside knowledge about this guy's mental state, but maybe they can try to make some sort of insanity or mental incompetency. It seems like a stretch to me, but they have to work with what they have, and he's not going to pay them $100,000 to simply go in and plead him out to these charges. He's going to want a better resolution, or he's going to want them to fight. And if they fight, then that's going to mean pretrial motions, motion to dismiss, looking very hard to find things where the police made a mistake in the hope that if the judge won't dismiss it, that the jury will think it was sloppy.
Jay Fulton, we talked about this earlier, and then I have Jeff weigh in as well. So we also are getting information about how police have linked Michael McKee to this crime. COE, remind me to take that aside in just one second. But Jay Fulton, investigators, according to reports, tracked a vehicle believed to belong to Michael McKee near the Tepe home during the 2 to 5 a.m. murder window. That vehicle is later located in Illinois. McKee is then arrested subsequently without incident in Rockford, Illinois. That's about 10 days after the crime. Walk us through that. I mean, what were the steps you think that that led to this? Was it one detective or someone, you say, hey, watch all this video. Someone's watching the video. They see a vehicle. How you're looking for the window of time? I mean, how would you even know to go then check that vehicle against a vehicle in Rockford, Illinois?
Well, they would have followed it at that point once it was identified in or around the scene. I will point out the scenario again. This is between 2 and 5 a.m. was the window they were looking at. Not a lot of traffic in this primarily residential neighborhood between the hours of 2 and 5 a.m. There's not going to be a ton of cars moving through there. There's not going to be a ton of cell phone activity on the towers, appropriate towers in that neighborhood. So during the canvass, which would have been probably 6 detectives and a supervisor would have been out on this, they're knocking on doors and identifying all security cameras up on the side of people's garages, up on people's front porches, who has Ring doorbell cams, and they're reaching out to these people and they're, be part of the team here, help us out, let us download that video. There is going to be a couple of detectives that are assigned to go through all that. And what you're looking for is activity around 1411 North 4th Street. That's and once you find that, you can go backwards and find out where the person came from to arrive at 1411, and you can go forwards and find out where they went. They were able to have this footage that puts him in the scene, followed him through the various cameras to the vehicle. Now you've identified a vehicle. Now you've got traffic cams that the city maintains. He would have driven north on 4th Street and then east on Hudson and northbound on 71. He's probably past 12 cameras by then. Now you've got a license plate. Now you know who owns the car. Now you're doing a dive on the person that owns the car. You find out it's the guy the people at the dental office were talking about. And now you're excited. You track that car via toll booths or via traffic cams on the freeway. You get a handle on it. I don't know the make, model of the vehicle. It's possible you reach out to the manufacturer and even have once you know the vehicle identification number, you can write a subpoena that allows you to track that vehicle's very GPS, the vehicle that belongs to someone else. So there was a lot of moving parts in this, but it looks like it went pretty smoothly. And I would say that they probably knew within the first 3 or 4 days who they most wanted to speak to, and who definitely needed to clear themselves based on all that what we would call circumstantial evidence. But circumstantial evidence in a court is as good as direct evidence. A jury is allowed to give it the same weight. So, and then you get your direct evidence. The circumstantial evidence leads you to your direct evidence. The search warrant on his house. Did we recover a firearm? His computer, his cell phone, the vehicle. Meanwhile, you've done a deep dive on this crime scene. Did he leave DNA? Most people leave something. This guy wasn't worried about being followed. Did he wear gloves? Did he touch anything? It's my opinion he probably spent not a significant amount of time, but enough time in that residence to reposition the dogs, and that
I hope he did reposition the dogs and the kids. I hope they did not see anything.
Ms. Tepe knew who and what before this thing happened. And that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, you see here, possibly the family knew that she was afraid of her. It sounds that everything is leading to that. Jeff Weninger, retired lieutenant with the LAPD, author of On Thin Ice. He's on a speaking tour, Clemson University. The man is hotly sought after. Jeff Weninger, to you, as a retired lieutenant in the LAPD, I mean, what is your biggest question? One that's out there seems to be, how did he get in? What's yours?
Well, I guess, absolutely. How did he get in? But really, it's about the evidence that's going to help convict him. I'd be curious to find out what were the results of the search warrants in Rockford at his residence, at his work. What are they finding on all of his electronics, all of that sort of stuff. That stuff fascinates me. I really have the fact that technology has become such a big part of investigations. I mean, that's just even enhanced my interest in it. I always reveled in it and was amazed with the opportunity to piece everything together and go from one step to the next step to the next step until you have the whole picture. And so there's just a lot of things that we'll know in time in regards to what the police knew and why did they make the decisions that they made. But, like I said, I can't be more complimentary. Listen, we talked about sloppy police work and everything. I came from the LAPD, the kings of sloppy police work. O.J. Simpson case, all kinds of questions, handling of evidence and trying to get some doubt in the jurors. But listen, I couldn't be more impressed with Columbus PD and the outside detectives.
Yeah, and you got new fans here. Greta Hostetler. I wonder if that's related to Jeff Hostetler, former Giants quarterback. Love Jeff W. Jeff W., author of On Thin Ice. Check out the book, and retired lieutenant in the LAPD. If you didn't know, now you know. Mark Weaver, first time as a guest on the show. Mark Weaver is the author. Look how smart this panel is of God Bless America, 250 years strong. Check it out. Mark Weaver. Final question and your final thoughts. What is the right to a speedy trial? We don't know if he's going to invoke that or not. How does that affect a prosecution versus criminal defense team of attorneys? And your final thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the book. It's a new children's book. I think your viewers might like it. If he's in prison, if he's in jail, he has 90 days to be tried, unless he files a motion which stops the clock. And they typically do. When they ask for discovery, that stops the clock. When they file a motion for dismiss or other sort of pretrial motions to dismiss. But I imagine you will see this case, if it's going to go to trial, I think you'll see this case going to trial in the fall.
Wow.
In the fall. This might be in the trial, and we're going to watch it if it is televised in the fall this year. That's fast.
Actually seems soon to me. But if you guys appreciate the content, we do have the best guests in true crime. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. We've got a Patreon page that the COE is now constantly updating. Great job, Mark Weaver. You were great, as were the other guests, 13 Mandy. Darby Fox is a licensed therapist out of the great state of Connecticut, close to my original home in New Jersey. How do you go from a guy that takes an oath to heal as a doctor to a killer, Darby Fox? How do you make that transition?
I think there's a compartmentalization. What he did is his occupation. I think he can keep it very separately. He felt he was wronged personally by whatever Monique and her husband did. Someone who is mentally ill or unstable can easily compartmentalize and justify what they need to do. And there is, we have a lot of history of doctors that have committed murders or these kind of things. It's ironic. You would think it would be inconsistent, but someone who can murder two parents in cold blood like that, we know that mentally ill. So we don't say that that is an inconsistency in and of itself that shows us there's mental illness.
Darby, real quick, what about this? He did not snap. It was premeditated. Do you believe that he was planning this out, if not for days, if not for weeks, if not for months, if for years?
Yes.
There you go. I love a nice, succinct answer. Final man who gets to say here is a man who's actually on the homicide team at the Columbus PD, retired detective Jay Fulton. Sort of the same question I asked Jeff Wenninger. If you're the lead detective, and I know you know the lead detective on this case, I guess what's the one piece of evidence that you really want in your grasp, or the one thing you want to know? I guess as I'm saying it, I'm thinking probably the weapon. I don't know if we know that they have it, but what is that one vital piece of evidence that you're looking for?
The weapon with his DNA on it would be a nice touch. That would be easily matched. His electronic footprint is going to be anymore. Those things are devastating to defense because they're science. The cell towers are the cell towers. They don't have an opinion. Cell towers not going to plant evidence. The GPS on the car solved many homicides by just putting the car there. What was his reason to be there? These are questions that will drive a defense attorney to the negotiating table, if you will. I don't see this thing going to trial. I see exactly what Mark says. This is going to be once that evidence is collected and presented in discovery. At that point, the defense is looking out to try and save their client's life, or to scoop out something at the back end of 50 years, 45 years. So yeah, the firearm, and he was sloppy with the car. Did he throw it in the Illinois River when he was driving across? I don't know. I hope not, but that would be the linchpin. His DNA inside the apartment, if they were able to collect something like that, that's an ace of spades. And then, like I said, putting the car there with something besides cameras, with his phone. Now you got the cameras putting his car there, the phone putting his phone there. If he's been downloading pictures, if he's got activity that shows that he was stalking on his personal computer, where he was looking at their Facebook or their wedding photos, and it's just winding him up. And I agree with Darby. This has been something that's been brewing since she kicked him to the curb. And I don't know what happened in his life that triggered it. Now it just became the time. So anything that
Well, we just heard some possible scenarios about what's been happening with his life. Go back and watch those if you missed them. Possible lawsuits. Was this something he was just over and over and over again rubbed in his face, if you will. Let's watch this last video for today. I believe it'll be the last video for today. We're going to keep doing the Tepe murders deep dive tomorrow.
Thanks so much for checking out my show. I really, really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I appreciate all the support. Some big updates here with the arrest of Dr. Michael McKee. Dr. McKee, of course, is now charged with murdering Spencer and Monique Tepe. Spencer Tepe is the dentist in Columbus, Ohio, who was found shot dead in his home along with his wife, Monique Tepe. And Dr. McKee is Monique Tepe's ex-husband. They got divorced in, I believe it was 2017. So it's been about 8 years since they were divorced. And police say that for whatever reason, we don't know the motive at this point, but 8 years later after the divorce, according to police, he showed up in Columbus, Ohio, and got into the Tepe's home and shot and killed Monique and Spencer while their 2 young children were also in the house. So the new development is Dr. McKee, he's a surgeon, by the way, he's a vascular surgeon, was in court. This is our first time seeing Dr. McKee in court since his arrest. This is in Illinois. So Dr. McKee works as a vascular surgeon in Illinois. He has in Rockford, Illinois is where he was working. He has an apartment, a condo in Chicago, Illinois, and the arrest happened in Illinois. So his first court appearance, which is what you're looking at right here, was in Illinois. It was very, very quick. It only lasted a couple of minutes. He came in looking, to me, very calm, didn't show any emotion, came in, had an attorney with him, and it was over very quickly because this was just an extradition hearing because they need to get him from Illinois back to Ohio where he's actually facing the 2 murder charges. He did not fight the extradition, which in my experience, normally I haven't seen defendants fight extradition. So this is what I expected, which means that he will be sent now back to Ohio, probably pretty quickly, where he'll have his first appearance. And that is when the court process involving these murders will really begin. But the first step was getting him extradited from Illinois back to Ohio, and he will not be fighting the extradition. Again, most of the time when I've covered stories and someone's arrested in another state, they don't normally fight extradition because it's kind of inevitable at some point, unless you're really trying to delay things, at some point you are going to get extradited. Right? So you're just delaying the inevitable. So he's not fighting it. I did pick up on one thing that I thought was interesting that his attorney said in court today. I want to play you this part of the hearing.
On behalf of Mr. McKee, I will assert his right to counsel. I will assert his right to remain silent. And Mr. McKee believes that the most expeditious manner in which he may defend himself against the charges pending in Ohio and to plead not guilty would be to waive his right to an extradition hearing and to have a governor's warrant and to agree to his immediate transportation to Ohio.
So based on what she said, he intends to fight these charges and defend himself. Is that just something that she would have said no matter what his initial plan is, whether he's going to initially plead guilty or not guilty? Maybe that was just something she was going to say regardless, just in this moment at the extradition hearing. We don't really know, but I did think it was interesting that the attorney said that. Something else new, he was initially charged with 2 counts of murder for Spencer and Monique Tepe. It's now aggravated murder, which indicates premeditation, which is important here because it opens up the questions of what police know. The arrest affidavit was very, very basic, essentially just saying that there was a car connected to Dr. McKee that connected him to the murders and also surveillance video. But what else do police know? Had he gone by the house before? Was he planning the murders? Had he been stalking Monique? These are all probably things that are starting to come together in the investigation that we're just not aware of. But the fact that they upgraded the charges to aggravated, indicating premeditation, show us that police know a lot more behind the scenes than what they are letting on right now. I'm going to get to my guest in a second, Maureen O'Connell, retired FBI agent. She has some really interesting insight into what she thinks is happening behind the scenes, into what she believes police know, into whether she thinks there was stalking involving Dr. McKee, and her insight into the marriage and what may have gone wrong. Really, really fascinating conversation coming up in a second. But there is one other thing that I wanted to get to, and that is a new 911 call that is coming out from December 19th. So more than a week before the murders. This is a call from someone who lives nearby. This is not from Spencer and Monique Tepe's house, but this is someone who lives nearby calling in about someone banging on their door.
We've already heard that the police have said that this call is not related So we're going to re-listen to it because Brian's playing it, but it was not related to their deaths.
In the middle of the night, around like before 5 a.m., around the time frame of when the murders would eventually happen with Spencer and Monique, which has got a lot of people wondering, could this somehow be connected? Could the person who was banging on the door in the middle of the night at a neighbor's house could that be connected to the murder investigation, even though it was more than a week before? I want to play you this 911 call.
What's the location of your emergency? Okay. Is there an apartment letter number?
No.
What's the emergency?
Somebody's knocking on my door. Because I'm picking they're banging on my door.
Okay, someone's banging and knocking. Do you know who this is?
No. I'm scared.
Do you have a description of them?
No, I can't see anything.
Have you asked them what they want or if they need something?
No.
Okay, what's your name? I'm sorry, say it again.
Yeah.
Does your phone number end in?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I've got it set up for someone banging and knocking on the door. If anything escalates or changes, give us a call back and let us know. We'll get officers there as soon as we can. All right, bye.
And then there's, of course, the surveillance video, which we have played before they made the arrest. They put out the surveillance video. In the arrest affidavit, it does reference surveillance video. It doesn't say that this is actually Dr. McKee, although you're going to hear Maureen in a second explain why she thinks that this is Dr. McKee. So a lot of moving parts here. Again, I expect we're going to learn a lot more once he does get back to Ohio and we see like a preliminary hearing and he makes his first court appearance actually in Ohio where the murders happened. But certainly interesting to see him in court. This, from what we can tell, very successful vascular surgeon, no criminal history, now in court charged with aggravated murder of his ex-wife and her new husband. When I say new husband, they've been married for years, but you know, her husband, Spencer, who is a dentist. I'm joined now by Maureen O'Connell, a retired FBI agent. She's also the host of the podcast, Best Case, Worst Case. It's nice to see you, Maureen. You and I have been talking about this case with the dentist and his wife murdered in Ohio, and a lot has happened since we last talked. There's so many questions I want to ask you. The first thing, though, is something new. When Dr. Michael McKee was first charged with their murders, it was just a murder charge. Now it's been upgraded to aggravated murder, premeditation. What do you think changed? I mean, what do you think made them upgrade it?
Well, it could be anything, but it could be stalking or something. Maybe they ran his license plate through the LPR reader, and they found him in the area more times than they knew. So maybe he was stalking her. Maybe he was following her around. They updated this after they arrested him. So perhaps they.
Let me know down below. Do you think he was stalking her? Yes or no? Do you think he was stalking her, as we would just watched, if you missed it, rewind, that they had reopened the divorce for some reason, which we don't know. So this is just guessing and speculation. But do you think he was stalking Monique and Spencer Tepe?
They found something on his phone for like photos or something that showed he was taking photos of her at the door with the kids or something along those lines. So stalking, I think, would ramp it up a notch, but there are a number of other things that, we'll find out during the trial.
And you saw the video of him in court. What's your first reaction to this guy?
He's a big dude and he's a strong dude. I mean, he's a big, strong man.
Yeah, he apparently played football in college. And when we first had the mugshot, you a lot of people were commenting on his job, but when you saw him in court, he's clearly, like you said, a big guy. In the arrest affidavit, it mentions the car. That's really the only evidence that they give. They say surveillance video and then surveillance of a car connected to him. Do you think he drove his own car? I mean, he lived in Chicago. He worked in Rockford, Illinois, I believe. What do you make of that?
I don't think he drove his own car. I think he either drove someone's car that he knew and borrowed, which is not as likely as he possibly rented a car. And I think he did that because he thought he was going to outsmart the detectives. And, homicide detectives don't just get hired as a homicide detective. You're first a police officer, you're pushing a black and white for years, then you move into the detective bureau, and then if you're really good, you become a homicide detective. These guys are very smart, very crafty, and they do a really good and thorough job of looking into all this stuff. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we found out that he either rented a car or borrowed a car, and that's the car he used on that night.
Yeah. What do you make of the fact that they got divorced 8 years ago, or almost 8 years ago? No, it was 8 years ago. You know, do you think he's been stalking her? Do you think, I mean, it's a long time, it seems like, to suddenly for him to pop back up and kill them.
Well, when people believe deeply that their life has been ruined at the hands of another person, just like we saw at Brown, right? They stew and it just grows in their mind. People are asking how this doctor, how he snapped. I don't think he snapped at all. I think it was a long, slow brew, and I think he's a grievance collector, which is what Jim and I talked to you about at the beginning of the Brown case. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
It's
a grievance collector. I've never heard that term before. A grievance collector. Of you? Could have been a rented apartment nearby to set up maybe trail cams, etc. This guy's delusional. Yeah, absolutely. Could be him, just to set the idea that some other people were around at night, like the area wasn't safe. Yeah. And by the way, this is going to be our last video today. We still have, it gets very interesting here in the last 25 minutes. And then I've got 10 or 12 other videos that are actually spectacular. So we're going to continue the Tepe deep dive for another couple days this week, as long as it's still top of conversation. And then we're going to go to Gus. Yeah. Me as well, a little bit, honey. I get it. Yep.
He blames her for his unhappiness. His life would be perfect. He probably looked at those images. He saw himself in those images and then blamed not just her, but her husband also. So he, I think that he's been just pooling this stuff in his mind and feeding it until it got to a point where he's just not putting up with it anymore. I think he's been in a state of depression for whatever reason, and he's blaming it on both of the Tepes. He sees photos. He's got to be able to see photos of them online, even if it is locked. It doesn't matter. It's not hard to find images of people like that. And maybe he got them initially before he was blocked, and he just ruminates over these things. So I think he's a grievance collector, and it finally just got to the point where, he's done. He's done letting these people live their life while he's not living the life that he should have led. He was a person who believed that hard work could get him anywhere. He played football at a very high level. He went to medical school, and he, as you said, he graduated with honors. He is a man that believes hard work brings great results. And yet here he is, unmarried, alone. Look, and his ex-wife, who was the love of his life, is having a great time. But he could also be someone who's unbelievably controlling. And he felt that by controlling every aspect of his life, he could make it better, when in reality, it oftentimes makes relationships really bad.
Do you think that he was stalking her?
Yeah, I think for sure he was keeping an eye on her. I don't know what that looks like. Could he have had access to her phone at some point? Maybe. Could he have hacked her phone? It's a possibility. Do you think he knows enough about her? Yeah, I do. So we're gonna find that out in the trial, as I always say. But I think sometimes it's the best way to find these things out. Everyone except for that one family member you mentioned has been very tight-lipped about this investigation, and I'm not really sure why.
Well, the one family member said that that no one was really surprised that he was the one arrested, and that they hadn't really brought that up before because they didn't want to compromise the investigation. But it makes me wonder if there was something that they all knew. Like, was she complaining about him? Was he calling again?
She had to complain about him because she was married to him. And when you get divorced and you're a Midwesterner, everybody in your family, because Midwesterners are, as a general rule, very tight with their families. And she seems to be big on family. She probably very likely went to a number of them for advice on what to do. And they probably told her to break up with him long before she even did. So they know the stories, they know the background. She may have bumped into him 5 months ago or something. There's also, when you and I talked before, we talked about why people called within an hour, and that was strange. And it is very strange. It's one of those things that I think falls under the category of the absence of normalcy. The absence of normalcy is, people having a reaction that you just don't understand why. Now it makes perfect sense. Not only did Monique tell her family, but he told his family too, and his coworkers. Maybe he was afraid that the guy was going to show up at his office because he's a hothead. He's a control freak.
Do you think they knew? Do you think that's why they were so quick to go to the house? Not to mention they probably didn't feel the 911 operator was taking them seriously. And then the cop goes to the wrong house. I don't know if they knew that. I think they were already en route. But do you think they knew if he was back in their lives threatening them? And hence why they said during the 911 call, one of the 911 calls, and more particularly concerning, is that we can't reach his wife, Monique.
He's a guy that maybe they don't feel safe. You know, some people won't buy a property or won't rent an apartment if it's on the ground floor because they're afraid of things. When I first saw that house, yeah, it's like that old brownstone style, but you know, they were sleeping on the third floor because a lot of people just don't feel safe on the first floor. I'm wondering if that had something to do with past experiences with this McKee guy.
Yeah, I thought about that too, that maybe that's why the coworkers were so concerned. And you were really zoning in on them calling in less than an hour. And while they didn't say it on the calls, maybe they were concerned because they knew that this ex had been coming around. And also remember the one says, and the wife isn't answering, Monique isn't answering either, which has us especially worried. Kind of plays into maybe they knew something. Maybe he had been talking about it at work. Oh, this guy's creeping us out or something.
Right. It very well could be.
Yeah. You know, I was looking at their wedding photos, Dr. McKee and Monique's wedding photos from 2017. And, you know, they look like a young, very attractive, happy couple back then. And he was in his residency, but then he became a vascular surgeon and, you know, he has no issues within his medical record. And it seems like he was very successful professionally. It does make me wonder why he didn't get married again.
I wonder why he didn't get married again also. And it could be just because, you know, she was the love of his life. She appeared to be the most wonderful, beautiful woman, you know, and a great mom. And that's heartbreaking because, you know, for whatever reason. But he also moved around a lot, didn't he? He went to Vegas. He was in LA for a couple of years. What was he looking for? I mean, was he going around for job opportunities, for training, or trying to move into a different area or to get really good at what he was doing? Did he go to, I don't know the hospitals he went to, but if he went to Cedars-Sinai or UCLA in LA because he wanted to become the best surgeon he could, that wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility considering what he likes to do. He likes to perform at a very high level.
Yeah, he lived in from what we can tell, a very, very expensive, fancy condo in Los Angeles, and also in the Lincoln Park area of Chicago. So he lived in some nice places, but no criminal history that we can find. How does someone go from being successful, disciplined surgeon, no criminal history, to killing two people?
Well, you can have a lot of really bad, frightening, scary activity in your background and not have a criminal record. And you often find that out if you work an investigation long and hard on some of these people, because, and I think we may have talked about this once before with the Reiner case. If you're getting in trouble, let's say he's getting in trouble at work, the deal is, hey, you need to leave this hospital. We're not going to have you here anymore. You're frightening some of the nursing staff, and we can't have that. So then what does he do? He just goes cross country, works for a year and a half, hope everything dies down, and then heads back toward home. Like working in Rockford, Illinois from Chicago, there's so many awesome hospitals in Chicago. Like 15 minutes from where his house is Northwestern. You've got University of Chicago. You've got all these just outstanding hospitals. And for someone that really strives for the very top, I'm not saying that.
Just a side comment. It's weird that both the doctors commuted a considerable distance, the dentist and the ex, to get to their place of work. It's just interesting. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or what, if it's just a weird coincidence.
If there's anything wrong with Rockford, I'm sure they have great hospitals, but it seems to me that the doctors that move to a place like Rockford want to live in Rockford. So they don't have a long commute. It's really nice. It's a good hospital. They're raising the bar at that hospital. That's understandable. But from Chicago to Rockford, that's quite a commute because he's in a really busy, traffic heavy part of the city. That's where he's choosing to live.
I guess I just go back to, you've spent your whole life working so hard and you've achieved this, you're a vascular surgeon. what happens where you would just know that you're probably giving all that and then you become a killer? You kill two people. Like, can people, I know you said you don't look at it like snapping, but to me, it just feels like, do they just snap? Or
He could have been suicidal, Brian. And once you're suicidal, in order to convince yourself to kill yourself, you have to devalue human life. You have to say the world is better without me. And how many times have we seen suicidal people become homicidal? Because that line is very, very thin. Once you convince yourself that your life is valueless, then what's the difference with anyone else? Well, if I am going to take my life, and it may have been his plan, like if they were closing in on him and he knew they were closing in on him, he could have very easily committed suicide. Who knows? That could have been part of his plan. But if you're going to kill yourself, you can see how someone would say, you know what? I'm taking those two with me because they're the reason that I'm not worth anything. My life would be fantastic if she didn't ruin it and he didn't help her. Or he may have just, the husband may have been collateral because he realized he couldn't get at her without getting at him. Maybe he drew the line at, I can't kill the kids too, and I'm not going to kill their mother right in front of them. We don't know. We may find out later. I'm not sure. But he seems to be right now in a cooperative mood, but we'll see how that goes.
It's sad to think about when he went into the house. You just think, I wonder if there was some kind of conversation he had with them before. I wonder if he just went in and killed them, or if there was a moment of, this is why I'm doing this. And,
Well, he didn't kill both of them at once. And it was a very loud bang. And I think that's exactly why they know precisely what time they both died, is because someone heard gunshots. And when they went door to door and they were interviewing everybody, someone said, I woke up and I thought it was fireworks, but I heard 5 or 7 loud bangs and I counted them. I looked at my phone and it said 3:32 or whatever that time was that they decided. So if you're going in that room and you're firing off a bunch of rounds, the first round's waking everybody up, including the golden doodle. Now, there are many, many instances, like people often ask law enforcement, why do you shoot so many times when you shoot someone? Why don't you just shoot them once? Well, there are many instances where you use a large caliber round and you literally blow someone's heart up in their chest, let's say, and they can still have 60 seconds of fight within them. Like they can come at you and go until all the oxygen is out of their blood. You need that heart to pump blood. But the blood that's currently in your system, as long as there's oxygen in it, they can still fight. And especially if they're on some form of narcotics, which I'm not alleging that has anything to do with this case. All I'm saying is one round often won't do the trick. And that may have been what happened with the husband waking up. Remember, we talked about an alpha. When you've got someone that's going to come after you and fight you, that's why I believe he pumped a couple of rounds into him.
And like you said, I mean, they have the specific time in the affidavit, 3:52 a.m., whereas a lot of the other cases I've covered, it'll be like a range, like we believe the murders happened between 2 and 5, but they have 3:52. So like you said, I guess it could be a neighbor, or maybe even they heard it on the Ring camera.
Right.
So they were able to pinpoint the time.
I don't know if Ring cameras go off with, I think they're activated with motion as a general rule, but maybe the dog was going bananas.
Yeah. How do you think he got in the house?
I don't know. You guys mentioned an Apple Watch, and I'm kind of thinking maybe there was an Apple Watch because that would have showed his pulse, I don't know. We'll find out maybe how they know exactly the time. Tell me, how do you think they know exactly the time? I'm going to actually add another video after this, half a video after this. Keep watching.
I think he either guessed the code, like maybe he went there on days past dressed like a delivery man, like if he saw a package and walked up there with a mask on or something and tried a number. And who knows? You don't have to open the door. You just try the number. And if you walk away at that point, it just defaults back to being locked.
Or could he have knocked on the door and one of them came down and opened the door?
I don't see that happening because they were both wound up in their bed. I don't know. I guess they could have. Honestly, who's letting anyone in at 2? No one's coming to your door at 2:00 in the morning for anything good.
Right. So you think he got in there some way on his own?
I think he got in there. Now, there have been cases throughout, history where people break into the house at a different time during the day, like she's unloading groceries, or that wouldn't necessarily work. But let's just say at another time, and they'll leave a basement window or the basement door open. Like if he left his home early in the morning and got there and somehow was able to, I don't know, he could have surveilled the house long enough to get the code, because when you think about it, I watch people put their PIN numbers in at the grocery store, and it just boggles my mind. They're just like 1 3 3
Right.
2 1.
Right.
I mean, and I'm like, what are you doing, people? I've heard people in neighborhoods like, hey, what's the garage code again? 3467. And oh my God, I can't take it. But it's not my house, not my problem. Who knows how she could have used her dad's birthday for everything, or the daughter's birthday for everything, or whichever child is older. Birthdays are what a lot of people use in their for their PIN numbers.
There is a new 911 call that's come out from December 19th. So, about 11 days before the murders, from a neighbor who is calling 911 about someone banging on her door, and says, that person may have been banging on other doors too. And they say, okay, we'll send an officer out to check it out. That's the most we know of it. Do you think that could be connected?
No, I think it's probably a drunk.
I don't know why Brian's asking her this, because we already know they're not connected, but let's listen in for a few more minutes, then we're moving to another podcast. Please hit the like. It helps the algorithm and get this story out.
I would find out if there's a bar nearby, or because of the timing of it. Even that was the first thing a lot of people thought of too when they saw that guy walking down the alley. Is there a bar nearby? Because drunk people walk by tend to walk far from bars, especially people that drink a lot. And I say that because they want to park further away so that they can maybe take side streets, or not travel down the main drag when they leave the bar, because they think police sit out there and wait for someone to come out.
So you think that's probably unrelated?
I think it's probably unrelated. I think the police are very clear. They must be already clear on why that happened. They'll know if there was a party nearby, or if there's a bar nearby or something like that. I don't think it was related. It's usually wasted people that go to a couple houses. But you know what? It could be a criminal too. There could be a criminal that went door to door. And he said today in his extradition hearing that his attorney said that he's looking forward to fighting these charges. So that will be an element of that will be something that his defense will put forth in the trial, to try to say it must be the same guy from a few days, 11 days before. But I don't believe it has anything to do with it.
Yeah, I heard that I think it was just a public defender in Illinois say that, because it was a very basic hearing, just an extradition hearing, and now he'll go on to Ohio. I was kind of wondering, I picked up on that too when she said he'll fight the charges. I was wondering if she just was she always says that, or just thought that was the appropriate thing to say before he went out, was extradited, or if that actually meant something, that he actually
not guilty,
Yeah. I mean, do you get the sense from him that he's going to try to fight, or is this more, like you mentioned, suicidal and depression, and could he just kind of like own up to this?
Well, now he's backed into a corner, so that's going to bring out a whole different part of his personality. I don't know. I do know that things change. Your mind changes. He may have a sense of euphoria that he finally did, and he was able to do what he really wanted to do all these years. So he may have a new reason to live, as terrible as that sounds. We don't know. He's also very likely going to get a bunch of letters from these psychotic women that just stalk all these inmates, like, the Mangione effect. So he might be feeling better because of that. I don't know. We'll see. But, what does he have to live for now? Anyways, his poor family.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When I saw him in court, my first thought, because he looked kind of like disheveled in the mugshot, at least that's what I thought. He was unshaven and the big jaw. But when I saw the court video, he seemed like kind of put together, I thought, and didn't like seem nervous or anything.
I agree.
He almost seemed like confident. He was entering the operating room to tell them what to do or something, He
was standing tall. He had his shoulders back, his head up, and that giant jaw,
So I don't know if that would give us an indication of how he plans to,
We'll know more. We'll know more within the next couple of weeks, because he's going to hire an attorney, or maybe he's just not going to waste his money on an attorney. We don't know. He has to, though, because he's probably made too much money and he's got too many assets to get a public defender. But
okay, let's show a video on his assets. I was going to show this another day, but we're going to show it now, at least part of it.
Ashley Banfield. This is Drop Dead Serious, and oh my God. It's day 11. This is January 10th. I did not expect to be bringing you this breaking news, But there's been an arrest. There's been an arrest in Columbus, Ohio. The story has been just needling me. I've been awake at nights. I have been feeling the Brian Koberger PTSD with someone skulking out there who killed a dentist and his wife in their beds and left their children behind in the bloodbath and made off into the night with not much from the police to go on in terms of the investigation or the motive or a suspect. And I was starting to think that we were going to go weeks on end like we did after Brian Koberger murdered those 4 innocent kids in their beds in Moscow, Idaho. That is not going to happen. That is not going to happen. We may get justice for Spencer Tepe and Monique Tepe way, way sooner than we did with Brian Koberger. And I cannot believe who it was they arrested and how little we knew about Monique Tepe's past. So let me just start from the beginning. First of all, I just want you to know how relieved I am that they've got someone, but also how much more mysterious and how many questions this opens up. Starting from the beginning, everything we know so far, it's just kind of remarkable. I kind of did how didn't we go there, right? Police say that the man they've taken into custody is Michael David McKee. He is 39 years old. Court records list his address as 2100 North Lincoln Park West, an apartment in Chicago. Mr. McKee is 6'1", about 200 pounds, brown hair, green eyes, and all that description is great. But this description is way more important. He is Monique Tepe's ex-husband. Yeah. Not many people knew that she had an ex-husband. I'm going to tell you a lot about this because it was kind of a blip in her life, maybe more than just a blip in a matter of time that she was married. Maybe there was something really big there because clearly if he's guilty of this murder, holy shit, something really went sideways in that marriage. But there's something else you need to know. He's a medical doctor. A medical doctor. His practice is listed in Rockford, Illinois. That matters. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But what kind of a doctor is he? A very, very specialized doctor. He is a vascular surgeon. And WebMD says he worked at OSF Children's Medical Group Congenital Heart Center in Rockford, Illinois. According to WebMD, he graduated from Ohio State University Medical School in 2014. And I want to just tell you how specialized this guy is and how much time he has spent in university. While in the back of my mind, again, the Idaho PTSD is kicking in because, we never expected that the guy they arrested for the murders of the 4 kids at 1122 King Road was going to be a PhD student, right? And now here in this case, we have a medical doctor arrested. Get this. In order to become a vascular surgeon, this is just a typical route. 4 years of undergraduate, 4 years of medical school. A traditional path will then take you into 5 years of general surgery residency. And then after that, an additional 2 years of vascular surgery fellowship. So that's a lot of time spent in university in order to become a vascular surgeon. So again, graduated in 2014. And wait until you hear why that matters because, doctors, some will graduate with lots of debt. I'm guessing he may have, because what you're about to find out in a minute kind of sounds like he was broke ass coming out of school and starting as a doctor. But let me first take you to his address currently on North Lincoln Park West in Chicago. He's got money now. He's in a fairly expensive high rise. It's located right on Lake Michigan. Look at the view from his apartment. That is a spectacular view of the water of Lake Michigan. And we found his apartment on Zillow because it's the address listed on the arrest warrant. So my thought is that this is going to be a pretty current address for him. And the Zillow pictures are beautiful. This place is lovely. Whether it's in a rented apartment or a condo, I don't know yet. I'll get there. But look, it's pretty fancy. And the Zillow Zestimate is about $500,000. But that can be, it could be accurate, could be off, could be upwards of $1 million, depending on all the fixtures and what was in there. That view certainly bumps it to more expensive than the average, apartment in that building that doesn't have the view. But if you look at the building itself, it's like beautifully appointed, right? It's in a really nice neighborhood, and the outside of the building is definitely not run down. This is an upscale apartment where this doctor lived. Michael David McKee, Dr. McKee, was arrested early this morning. And again, it is Saturday, January 10th, and they picked him up in Illinois. He is being held right now on an out-of-state warrant for 2 counts of murder, and they're saying that he's going to be in court on Monday in 2 days. So it's going to be a shitty weekend in jail for Mr. McKee, without a doubt. What is interesting is how police said that they got to him. Behind the scenes, I have been wondering, what were these cops, what were these detectives doing? Why didn't they call in the FBI? Jennifer Coffendorfer wondered, why didn't they bring in the FBI? They said they had so much surveillance video to go over that they were overwhelmed. And it's like, well, God, I mean, get help because, TikTok, it's never good if there's a homicidal maniac running around town like Koberger did for a month and a half after the killings of the Idaho 4. But it turns out these cops were doing a lot behind the scenes. This is not some big dramatic confession. This is not a mind-blowing tip that.
Okay, we have some rules in this group, and that means we don't go backwards. If you left here to go watch someone else's video and now you want to come back and interrupt our live, we're not entertaining it. So please don't answer the questions. You can go back and watch it like I typed in Anna Roland if you missed it because you were somewhere else. Let's stay focused and stop interrupting the chat for what we are watching now. Thank you.
It opened this case wide open, right? Neighborhood surveillance. This is what it came down to. All those cameras that we've been showing you, obviously one's on houses, the one that was on the street corner, neighborhood surveillance. That's where this started, and that's how it ended. Investigators reviewed the footage from all around the Tepe's home, and they spotted something. A vehicle arriving in the area right before the shootings and leaving right after the shootings. What does this remind you of? They followed that vehicle trail. They identified that vehicle, and what do you know? They were able to connect that specific vehicle back to Dr. McKee, Mo's ex-husband. Police later found this same car in Rockford, Illinois. Whatever it was, there's evidence inside the car that linked them back to Dr. McKee. And ownership of the vehicle, not just a rented car, not a stolen car, not a borrowed car, ownership of the car tied right back to, say it with me, Dr. McKee. And that's when things started getting real quick in the investigation. Now, once you start looking at Dr. McKee's history with Monique Tepe, with Mo, there are details that start to stand out, and not in a sensational way, but in a way that matters. Their marriage was very short, like ridiculously short. They got married in August of 2015. Nice summer wedding, right? But they were already separated by March of the next year. So count with me. That's 7 months. 7 months. And they were already calling it quits and getting out of each other's hair. Here,
Marie, yes, I know. And I deleted your comment multiple times. So maybe just look when I delete a comment. I'm trying to keep the chat going forward. So could you stop talking about something other than what we're watching? And let's keep the conversation going forward, please. Thank you.
Here's what's a little bit weird. Doesn't really line up, but okay. They did not file for divorce right away. That's not so odd. Some people try to work it out during a trial separation, right? They stayed legally married for more than a year after the separation. That's going on a little bit. Like, okay, some people try separation for a year. So married 7 months, already moving out. And then it was like 14 months before they actually filed for divorce. So May of 2017. So they married in summer of 2015, out of it by the spring of 2016. A year and 2 months later, May of 2017, they're like, that's it, call it quits, file the paperwork, we're done. And then once the paperwork was filed for divorce, it was over almost immediately. And it was finalized by June. So May, June. Yeah, it was like about 6 weeks. That's really lightning fast. Like they had talked it all out. They had figured it all out. They didn't, end up in a trial. They didn't do any of that stuff. They did it in a settlement, right? It wasn't a divorce trial. It was a settled event. So that tells you that maybe things were smooth in the way they decided to divorce. Because listen, I've been divorced. I know the process. You can either be real ugly about it or you can talk it out with your person and you can decide to come to an agreement and then just go to court and stamp it. 6 weeks is that. The ugly stuff goes on for weeks and weeks and months and years for people who just can't get, they're just like at loggerheads. This doesn't sound like that to me. It's a bit strange given where we are. You got a marriage that ends fast. You got a long stretch of time where divorce isn't filed. Then you got a divorce that's like rubber stamped, lightning speed. So we looked a little further into the filings, and buried in those filings are little things that tell you a hell of a lot about how the relationship actually functioned while they were together and separated, right? Monique listed her engagement ring and her wedding ring as separate property, not marital property. And when asked why she did that, she wrote a very simple answer. You ready for this? It's weird. Quote, I paid. Quote. Okay. Yeah, okay. Maybe non-traditional. It's not usual. It's not typical. An engagement ring is usually purchased by the guy, given to the girl, owned by the girl. There's been a lot of contentious fights in civil court about give me back the ring if the marriage doesn't work out or if the engagement's off. And typically it belongs to the person who bought it. Then again, oftentimes it's looked at as a contract. You bought a ring, you gave it to the girl as a promissory contract that there will be a union. So sometimes you can look at it as, hey, it was just a gift. You should give it to me. I own it. I'm the, ownership is king. But often it can be looked at as a contract. So there she is writing, I paid. She bought her own engagement and wedding rings. She put the values on them as well. The engagement ring was $2,500. The wedding ring was $3,500. And I know what you're going to say. Wait.
I wonder if that includes the band, the wedding bands, for both of them. So interesting here. We're almost done today's deep dive, and then we're going to continue with the Tepe this tomorrow. We listened to the Brian Enton video. It was 39 minutes long. So the time to ask questions would have been during that 39-minute video. Sorry, everybody, but I'm trying to keep this channel out of the drama, out of the weeds, on topic, period. Thank you.
Hey, the engagement ring was cheaper than the wedding ring. It's usually the other way around. Like an engagement ring usually has a stone in it, a diamond, typically, not always, but usually. And the wedding ring is usually a band. But no, this is what the documents say. The divorce documents say she paid $2,500 for the engagement ring and $3,500 for the wedding ring. And by the way, can I just mention, $2,500 for an engagement ring means you're not really getting a big stone. You're going to be hard pressed to get a very big stone at $2,500. So I looked at the wedding ring best I could to Spencer Tepe and what that looked like. I don't know if Monique paid for it. I don't know if Spencer paid for it. But from what we can see, her wedding videos and her wedding photos, the stone looks kind of significant, big enough to stand out in the picture. My guess is that it was likely not a $2,500 engagement ring marrying Spencer Tepe for what it's worth. So I don't know if there was financial acrimony in the last marriage. I don't know if things got so much better in this marriage. Could it have meant pictures like this online that, made the ex-husband seething with anger and seeing this lavish lifestyle and this beautiful wedding and this lovely house? And all of these things are things to think about when we're thinking about motive, when we're thinking about how, the whys. There's going to be a lot more talk about all of that. But at the time that the filings, at the time all of that was happening, they were not even living in the same state, right? Dr. McKee and Monique. Monique was living in Ohio. And she was working for Nationwide. And Dr. McKee was working in Virginia at a medical clinic. So not just separation in the same city, they weren't seeing each other more than likely. There was also a standard mutual restraining order that was issued as part of the divorce. And let me stop you right there. I got a divorce. There was no such thing as that for us. Standard restraining order. I wouldn't have filed it anyway. I didn't have that kind of divorce. But a mutual standard restraining order. Maybe it's unique to Ohio, maybe other states as well. It's not standard for every state, I can tell you, but this was boilerplate in this case and maybe a lot of other cases in Ohio, but it does specifically prohibit harassment and bodily harm between spouses. Okay, interesting. Well, this is years ago, right? Right now, Dr. McKee has not entered a plea. He's sitting in jail. I don't even know if they have a magistrate on duty, right? It might just be one of those things like it sucks to be arrested on a Friday night or a Saturday because you're going to sit there until judge comes back into work Monday morning, right? Sometimes they have weekend magistrates who can, do some things, but they're not going to give you bond, not typically for something this big. He has not been extradited back to Ohio yet, so he's still sitting in Illinois, and police haven't laid out a public motive yet. I don't know if there'll be a gag in this case or not, but the case has shifted. It has shifted. Holy shit. Did it ever just shift? We're not asking who at this point. We're asking why. And we're asking how. But I do have one big fear, and that is motive. Just like Koberger. We still don't know. We still don't know what brought him to that house. In this case, at least we have one thing that's crystal clear. He knew this woman. If it's Dr. McKee, he knew this woman. And they had a love affair. And it went south. And she had a new love affair that was looking pretty good. 2 beautiful kids, great house, successful dentist, lovely wedding video that's all over the internet. So, and you know that there's a fine line between love and hate, right? And it is a razor's edge. And when you tip over, you're in it. You're into hate. So it got me thinking about the 3 shell casings and the information about the forensics of the bodies, how Mo and Spencer were found. We know that Mo was shot once in the chest, and we know that Spencer was shot multiple times. I'm thinking twice because there's 3 shell casings, but I don't know if the killer picked up a couple shell casings on the way out. I don't know how many times he was shot. But if that's the case, it could be 2 things. I hate you. I want you to suffer. I'm going to shoot you once and watch you die. And I hate him too, but I'm going to take him out with a number of gunshots, right? A little like Betty Broderick, right? If you think about Betty Broderick bursted into the bedroom of her ex-husband and his new wife and shot them in bed. Spencer was seen off the bed in a pool of blood, covered in blood. The 911 caller did not see Mo, but I've got lots coming up on what he did see, where he saw it from, clearing up a lot of the confusion in that. But
Okay, everybody, please hit the like. We're going to be back here tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. doing more of the Tepe coverage, deep dives. And if you're seeing ads, as we've talked about before on this channel, can't do anything about that. That's a YouTube thing. All lives are running ads now. You'll need to pay for premium if you don't want to see ads, but I cannot do anything about that.
again, you're going to have to listen to the stuff that I just recorded before the arrest when my headspace was, in the mystery of who done it and the Idaho, PTSD. But I've got a lot of information on that. And I've done a big breakdown on the cops' response to the welfare check, the body cam. I've got that. And I've zeroed in on an address. And I do not think that the police were anywhere near even 4th Street. North 4th Street, not in the investigation that I've done. So without further ado, what I want to do is I want to play for you everything that I just finished recording before this arrest happened. Hey, everyone, I'm Ashley Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. And I don't know about you, but I'm just going to say it. I have Idaho anxiety. 3 years ago, when some stranger broke into a college student's home just off campus and stabbed 4 innocent kids to death and then just made off in the middle of the night. And we were left all in the dark with some comment from the police like, don't worry, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's no danger to the community. This was a targeted attack. I bring this up because there's something that's brewing in Columbus, Ohio with this dentist and his wife who were murdered in the middle of the night. And right now we're at day 10. It's January 9th. And there's nothing. There's no suspect. There's no leads. There's very little, if anything, coming from the police. And I remember the parlor games, the guessing games, the chewing up of people and spitting them out all over, Moscow, Idaho, until there was a suspect. I just remember like so much trauma from those days. I remember feeling for the people of Moscow, all those kids, the students whose parents said, you're coming home now. I want you home now. Christmas exams be damned, right? I remember that. I remember that terror, and I wasn't even in Moscow, Idaho. I remember Brian Enton from News Nation, my colleague there, telling me the palpable feelings of what it was like to know that there was a homicidal maniac somewhere out there among them. And the police were saying, don't worry about it. It was a targeted attack. There's no danger to the community. Well, there was. There was a homicidal maniac who was a big danger to the community. But the rest of us were left thinking, well, was this a drug deal gone bad? And are all these 4 victims a bunch of druggies? And, those parlor games were painful. And in retrospect, they were just awful to consider what people were thinking with the lack, in the void, in the vortex of the black hole of no information. And here we are in Columbus, Ohio, and it's starting to feel like those days after Brian Koberger did what he did at 1122 King Road. Something else I want to talk about on this podcast, because the pieces are starting to really come together. I know everybody's been sleuthing like crazy online, but I think we now know a few things that we didn't know before. For starters, we now have the body cam of the police officer who responded to the welfare check and did not respond to 1411 North 4th Street, which is the Tepe's house. The officer responds to 1417. But I'm going to show you some things in this podcast that may prove he wasn't even on the right street. I don't personally believe that he even got to 1417 North 4th. I think he was on another street. I'm not kidding. In a minute, I'm going to show you the pictures and count up the houses from the Tepes and prove to you why I believe that. But I also have other information and, real sleuthing on the 911 call that came in from Spencer's friend. His name is Alex Diddy, and he's the one who said, there's a body, there's blood. I can't get any closer. But when you really break down the 911 call, and I'm going to do that in a moment, you're going to learn for sure he's inside the house. And it's now effectively been proven he's not calling from looking in the second story window, which was so complicated to us, right? How could you get up there? But he's inside the house. And here's what's even more just, I don't know, jaw-droppingly sad. I think he rescued the 4-year-old, maybe even the 17-month-old. And this 1-year-old is 17 months old, apparently, closer to 2 years old. So when I break down the 911 call in a moment, you're going to hear why we now believe that Alex Diddy was inside the house, saw the carnage, got the F out of there, and grabbed the kids and took them downstairs, at least one of them. Okay, so all of that I'm going to go through in just a moment, but I want to start from the beginning because, like I said, it is starting to feel like the days of, after Brian Koberger slipped into 1122 King Road and butchered those 4 innocent college kids. That is now 3 years ago. Because whoever murdered a popular dentist and his wife in Columbus, Ohio, 10 days ago, and I'm recording this on January 9th, this is a complete mystery. He's still out there skulking around, but with very little said by the police, And that's just what Koberger did for a month and a half before he was caught. So police actually did address that elephant in the room. Here's what Chief Elaine Bryant of the Columbus PD said to ABC News yesterday, and I quote, "I know it's frustrating for people. I know they want answers. As soon as we are able to provide more information, we will absolutely be coming back to talk about that. But right now, it's premature for us to say what the motive is, or we don't have a suspect identified at this point." So no suspect yet, no motive yet. And that's exactly where we were at this point in the Koberger investigation. But eventually they got their man. They got him. So do Columbus police have a handle on this case? Something we just don't know about, all the back channel stuff that could be going on? Well, today they cleared up something. They are now officially backing up the Tepe family members' claim that an unidentified female caller who called 911 from inside that home 9 months before the double murder was, in fact, not Monique Tepe, the murder victim.
Hi, this is 911. We just got a hang-up call. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're crying. Do you need police, paramedics, or anything?
No, I'm okay. I promise. I'm just emotional. I'm okay. I don't need nothing.
Well, can I ask what had you call 911 in the first place? Like, were you having an argument with
Me and my
somebody?
man got into it, but I'm okay. I promise.
Did anything ever get physical?
No.
You guys were just arguing, nobody hit each other?
Yes.
Okay. All right, man. Well, I have the information here. I can go ahead and tell the officers to cancel hitting over to your address there at 1411 North 4th Street.
Yes.
If anything changes, call us back.
Okay.
All right,
I'm
thank you.
sorry.
We have heard over and over again that was not the Tepe family residence. We're just going to watch one more video here.
Killer walking into an Illinois courtroom cuffed in a jail jumpsuit, now accused of a horrific crime. A divorced ex-husband who allegedly planned, plotted, and killed his ex-wife and her husband with children in the home. Michael McKee allegedly drove more than 6 hours to the home of Spencer and Monique Tepe and shot them dead in the middle.
If you're just coming in, please do the like. That would be really appreciated. We'll be back here tomorrow for more deep dives on the Tepe case, probably tomorrow and maybe another day. And then we're going to get back into Gus Lamont.
Middle of the night on December 30th.
Can you check the record? Michael McKee.
Not only do we have the new courtroom video of McKee appearing today, we also have documents that shed light on his failed marriage and what police say locked them in on him as their suspect. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick, there is a reason On the Case is one of the most watched shows on YouTube, and there is a reason that Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm with more than 1,000 attorneys who have recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000, and in Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million, 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen.
Anybody else tired of Morgan & Morgan?
Kill his ex-wife, Monique Tepe, and her husband, Dr. Spencer Tepe, in the middle of the night on December 30th inside their home in Columbus, Ohio? That is a question that may take some time to definitively answer.
Can Can you check the record? Michael McKee.
Here's McKee making his first court appearance today in Rockford, Illinois. It's about an hour and a half west of Chicago. There, he entered the room in a jail jumpsuit. His hands were shackled, and he only said his name calmly when the judge asked. Now, we'll talk more about what will happen next in his criminal proceedings in just a moment. But this is what we know about Michael McKee, a little bit of it to this point. McKee is a vascular surgeon in Rockford, Illinois. Court documents show that he has an address for an expensive condo building in the Lincoln Park area of Chicago. McKee, though, is a native of Ohio. He went to Ohio State. That's where he graduated in 2014. And it's believed at OSU is where he met Monique. And this is a picture of them on their wedding day in 2015. Now, the couple were married for only roughly 2 years. They divorced in 2017. They didn't have children. Now, we have acquired the documents related to McKee's divorce, and here's what we know about that. We know that after graduating from Ohio State, McKee did a residency to continue his surgical training in Roanoke, Virginia, and Monique lived with him there for a period of time. McKee has active medical licenses in Illinois and California. We also have the documents for the end of the marriage that show at the time they divorced, Monique was actually living in Ohio. The decree states that Michael was given the home in Virginia, and Monique was awarded the divorce on the basis of incompatibility. Now, as this investigation started, there were many people who found out that Monique had been married before. You could find it in public records. And that started to point the finger at McKee, the ex-husband. But as this case moved on, it had been reported that the divorce between McKee and Monique was amicable. Court records also seem to show that. And it also shows that McKee was living in another state. But then something obviously changed in this investigation, and detectives ended up circling in on Michael McKee. Now, before we get to what happened in court today in Rockford, I do want to get to what police say really cracked this case. And this is at least the little bit that they're giving us right now, because they haven't officially said that McKee was the person of interest walking near the Tepes' home in that video that they put out last week around the time that the Tepes were killed. But when you think about surveillance video, there is no doubt that that video played a role in their ability to track down Michael McKee as their suspect. So let's walk through what happened where police are now filling in the holes. You have Monique and Spencer Tepe. Now, that couple married in 2020. This is according to their obituaries. And this is actually, of course, their wedding video of the celebration that they had in 2021 that was shot by Spencer's brother-in-law, who gave us permission to show you this video. We know that Spencer and Monique, and this was years after Monique had divorced Michael McKee, Spencer and Monique met online. And they built what appears to be an incredible life together. Spencer was a dentist who was beloved at his office. It seems he really loved his job. Monique was someone who cared a lot about young people. She had her degree in early childhood education from Ohio State, but then she became a stay-at-home mom to raise Spencer and Monique's 4- and 1-year-old children. Now, we kept hearing over and over again that Spencer and Monique were just people who loved to bring people together. They loved having people over to their home in Columbus. They were the life of the party. Monique is being remembered as someone who was a great friend. She loved to bake. Spencer, he loved his Ohio State Buckeyes, and he also loved the Cincinnati Bengals. He grew up in the Cincinnati area. Now, Spencer graduated from Ohio State as well. He graduated in 2017 with his degree in dental surgery. Spencer worked at a dental office that was roughly 75 miles away from his house in Athens, Ohio, which is a heck of a commute. And on December 30th, Spencer didn't show up for work, and his office was very concerned, so they called 911.
Columbus Police, Tech 107.
Yes, I would like to ask for a wellness check on an individual at their home.
Now, if you've been following this story with us, you know these 911 calls that were made on the day that Spencer and Monique were found dead. The calls started around 9 o'clock in the morning when Spencer didn't show up at the dental office.
This individual, Spencer, works with me, and he did not show up to work this morning, and we cannot get a hold of him or his family.
He didn't show up to work?
Correct.
Okay. Does he have medical problems or?
No, and he's been reliable, and we cannot get in touch with him, his wife, his family, anybody that lives in that house.
Okay. So
His
you're
2 kids in home. I'm in Florida. I own the business. I was informed by my employees that he was not at work, and he runs the office.
That first call came in from Spencer's boss, who was on vacation in Florida. He says when he started getting calls from employees who were concerned that Dr. Tepe didn't show.
Have you guys received anything else, like calls about him or like a car accident or anything like that?
No, sometimes people just don't show up to work. I mean, maybe he's sick. I don't know.
Now, as much as that dispatcher, you hear them say, well, it's just common for people not to show up, or maybe he's sick, maybe he overslept. His boss, knowing Spencer, was adamant that something was up because Spencer just wouldn't show up for work.
I just know that he is he is always on time, and he would contact us if there was any issues whatsoever. And I just don't know how else to say this. We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
So about 20 minutes later, a police officer in Columbus was dispatched to the home of Spencer and Monique Tepe, but they reported they didn't see anything, so they left. There was more context to that we learned last week, because this is the body cam video from that officer's response, and you can see they're not at the right house. The chief of police in Columbus did say that the officer mistakenly went to a home that was a few minutes away from the Tepe's house. So even though that police officer had left saying, hey, I couldn't find anything, concerned friends of the Tepes, they just knew something was wrong. So they went to Spencer and Monique's house. And they say when they got there, they could hear the Tepe's children inside the home. This was around 10 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, what's the emergency there? Police or medical?
Maybe both, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of doing the
We had a call out there. They knocked on the front door and back door multiple times, and there was no answer.
Yeah, no answer. I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell, but we can't get in. At this point, I don't know if I need to break the door in or just get in the house or what.
Okay, were you out there when the police was out there?
I wasn't. I just got here about 5 minutes ago.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll send them back out to you.
Then there was another call from Spencer's work.
Our boss did not report to work. We haven't been able to get a hold of him for 3 hours. We are on site, and we can hear.
Okay, I just talked to somebody there.
Okay, I'm just making sure somebody called.
5 minutes later, the phone call that comes in that takes this story to a whole other level, where it's no longer about a couple that was missing, and maybe they missed work, maybe they overslept. It became a terrifying reality.
We've got several calls on that. What's changed since the last person I talked to?
There's a body. There's a body.
There's a body inside?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get you on the line with the medic, okay? Stay on the line.
Now, as the caller waits, you can hear the sounds of small children in the background. The Tepe's kids, they were unharmed.
There's a body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just did a wellness check. We just came here, and he appears dead. Okay. There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood. I can get closer to see more than that.
Okay, you can tell he's obviously not breathing or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it like kind of like cuddle, like, you know, does he look like?
It doesn't cuddle. I can't look.
Okay, all right, understand. Okay, and then when was the last time somebody spoke to him?
I can't look. I didn't hear that before. Did y'all hear that before? I thought he couldn't get closer, but he says, I can't look. Like it's too upsetting to look. Yeah, exactly, because the kids are there, Donna. Nice to see you back.
Like yesterday, I suppose.
Yesterday, okay. Yeah. How old is he?
37.
37, okay. Is he like a drug user or anything like that?
No. Okay,
all right, just that's a real young age.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, all right, we're on our way.
The concerned friend says they saw Spencer's body inside the home.
A caller saying they can hear kids inside. Thought he heard one of them yelling. Now we're getting another call saying there's a body inside. That's receiving copy.
Who said there's a body inside?
Now, when police went inside, they found Spencer dead, as well as his wife. Police say that they found Dr. Tepe in a second-floor bedroom. He was shot multiple times. Monique was also found in a second-floor bedroom. She had at least one gunshot wound to the chest. Police said that they did not have a murder weapon. It's unclear at this point if they have that murder weapon after zeroing in on their suspect of Michael McKee. Police reportedly recovered 9mm shell casings as well from the scene. So that is critical evidence. We'll see how it factors into how they make their case against Michael McKee as the criminal proceedings go on. A big question still at this point is, how was McKee allegedly able to get into the Tepe's home? Remember, police said there were no signs of forced entry. It is unclear also what type of contact he had with Monique, if any, after their divorce. The chief of police late last week gave interviews to local media in Columbus, and she said that at that point they didn't have a suspect, but they also said they couldn't share everything that they knew. Then, about 24 to 48 hours after those interviews with local media, it was between Friday and Saturday around midnight that bombshell arrest happened, records showing that Michael McKee, the vascular surgeon, was booked into jail in Rockford, Illinois, just after midnight on Saturday. This is his mugshot. Since his arrest, McKee's charges have been upgraded to aggravated premeditated murder. Obviously, this is a huge step in the investigation, but there is still a lot that we don't know about the case that is being built against McKee. Here is what we do know, though, about how police seem to zero in on him. So this is a page from the criminal complaint that reads, quote, during the subsequent investigation, detectives were able to identify a suspect through neighborhood video surveillance. The suspect was tracked to a vehicle which arrived just prior to the homicides and left shortly after the homicides. Detectives were able to identify this vehicle further and link it to Michael McKee. Detectives located the vehicle in Rockford, Illinois, and found evidence of McKee in possession of the vehicle prior to and after the homicides. Police narrowed the timeline that they believe that the Tepes were murdered down to between 2 and 5 o'clock in the morning on December 30th. And that's when they asked the public to provide videos or any information they have from that time and that area of Columbus. They released this video, this person of interest video of what looked like a man walking down an alley behind the Tepes home between 2 and 5 in the morning. They were wearing gray pants, a dark jacket, and a hood. They were looking away from what appears to be the home surveillance camera that captured this video. And it appears to have been major evidence in helping law enforcement track McKee down. Now, McKee was arrested in Rockford, Illinois, which is about an hour and a half west of Chicago. And on the arresting documents, McKee lists an address for a very nice luxury condo building in the ritzy Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago. Looks like a really nice place. And WLS TV in Chicago spoke with one of McKee's neighbors, and she said that he did not come off as someone who would commit a crime like this. This woman said, quote, he did not seem like somebody that would do something like this. You never know. you meet people everywhere and you don't know if they're a serial killer. She also went on to say, I sat down with this man. I talked with him at the pool, barbecuing, about what a beautiful day it is. And then he turns out to be a killer. It's kind of shocking. How do you explain to a child that mom and dad are here one day and gone the next? Those are the real victims of this whole case, are the children, end quote. Now, we are still working to learn more information about McKee. And if he did this, why did he do it now? Why did he do it a couple of days after Christmas and on the day before New Year's Eve? Today, McKee did make his first court appearance. This was our first chance to see him since his arrest. This appearance was in Rockford, Illinois, and it was very quick. It lasted less than 3 minutes. Now, McKee didn't seem emotional when he walked into the courtroom. He calmly said his name to the judge. He then waived his extradition, meaning he is slated to return to Ohio to face the charges for allegedly killing the Tepes. Here's what happened in court.
Can you answer for the record? Michael McKee, have you had a chance to speak with him?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's your position at this time?
Yes, at this time, Your Honor, on behalf of Mr. McKee, I will assert his right to counsel. I will assert his right to remain silent. And Mr. McKee believes that the most expeditious manner in which he may defend himself against the charges pending in Ohio and to plead not guilty would be to waive his right to an extradition hearing and to have a governor's warrant and to agree to his immediate transportation to Ohio.
Understood, thank you. We will set this matter then for 2 o'clock on Monday. Your status on the transfer?
Thank you.
Anything else we can do today?
Not really.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And with that, a shake of the hand with his attorney, and McKee exited the courtroom, and now he is awaiting for authorities in Ohio to come pick him up and bring him to Columbus.
He's a big man, y'all. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, my dear. That's so kind of you. Really appreciate you. Thank you. Definitely a big man. Let's keep going.
Judge set a status hearing for Monday next week, and that's only if McKee is still in Illinois and not in Ohio. Now, before we talk more about this case, I do want to share with you the statement from the Tepe family, one that they released on the day of McKee's arrest. This is what it says, quote, "Today's arrest represents an important step toward justice for Monique and Spencer. Nothing can undo the devastating loss of 2 lives taken far too soon. But we are grateful to the City of Columbus Police Department, its investigators, and assisting law enforcement community whose tireless efforts helped to capture the person involved. We thank the community for the continued support, prayers, and compassion shown throughout this tragedy. As the case proceeds, we trust the justice system to hold the person responsible fully accountable. Monique and Spencer remain at the center of our hearts, and we carry forward their love as we surround and protect the 2 children they leave behind. We will continue to honor their lives and the light they brought into this world," end quote. Join us now to talk a little bit more about this investigation and the big developments that happened over the weekend. Retired Detective Commander with the Chicago Police Department, Will Spilar. Thank you for once again talking about this case with us. I remember texting you over the weekend when this broke, and it was like, I had heard, and what had been reported was the divorce was amicable, that it didn't seem like there was a lot of noise there surrounding Michael McKee as a suspect, but maybe that was a ruse by police. And then here they are arresting him. I guess, what was your reaction when you saw that this was the arrest that Columbus police made?
I wasn't surprised. Obviously, we talked about this before, that it was somebody that one or both knew. The question that comes to mind is, why now?
Yeah.
Why so far after the divorce? She's apparently moved on. She's got a family now. Why now? And how did he get in?
Marriage in 2015, so they would have been late 20s, and then they're divorced in 2017. We'll see what other details come out. The marriage documents just say they were incompatible. He keeps the house in Virginia, and then she had moved to Ohio, and don't know how much communication they had over the years. From what we know from police, what seemed to be the mistake allegedly that McKee made was they were able to track him through the neighborhood cameras that we saw, that person of interest picture, which, perhaps I haven't had official confirmation that is him, but let's say it is. And then it goes to a vehicle. The vehicle goes to Rockford, Illinois, or Chicago, or wherever it was, and they're able to piece it together with him. What more evidence, though? Because certainly an ex-husband in the area, in a car, right before a woman and her husband, his ex-wife, are killed, and then leaving shortly thereafter, and he lives in another state. To the public, that is incredibly suspicious. But when it comes to proving a case in a court of law, what more might law enforcement need?
Well, you have to prove that it's him. I mean, okay, we know it's his. Say we got cell phone records. We talked about if that person in the alley was in fact him, and his phone number hit off the cell phone towers, it's an odd number. It's a number that shouldn't typically be there. But that's his phone. And I've had many a trial where the argument is, okay, well, you tracked the person's phone. How do you know he had it? You tracked the person's car. How do you know he was the one that was driving? These are all defense questions. And these are all things where not only do you have to determine that it was his stuff that was there, you have to determine it was him. And I believe, your investigation will clearly show that it was him. Obviously, you have to overcome these things when it comes time to trial. An arrest is one thing with probable cause, but proving somebody guilty is a whole different thing. And you have to prove not only was his stuff there, but he was there.
If he didn't have his cell phone on him, and let's just say there were, you have this video of him in the area, and then in a car that arrives before and after, you're proving that he was in the area. But when it comes to shooting and killing 2 people, what's the bar when it comes to making an arrest? Because it's easy to say, like, okay, he was there, that could be our suspect. But then, is that enough to say we're going to get the arrest warrant and we're going to take this to another level? And now he's going to face these 2 charges of plotting and planning to allegedly kill the Tepes.
There's a big difference between probable cause and beyond a reasonable doubt. So your threshold for probable cause isn't that high. I mean, a reasonable person with all this evidence that we know about, not including some of the stuff they may have, like maybe something from inside that house that they produced, that they made evidence to say, okay, we have probable cause to say it was him. Threshold for probable cause is not that high. Reasonable doubt's a lot higher. So I think the probable cause with his vehicle, with his stuff, with his phone and his vehicle being around there, in fact, they have that, I think that's enough for probable cause.
Because in the criminal complaint, it does talk about identifying him on the neighborhood surveillance, and then the car, that is his car, they say, that then they trace to Rockford where he's arrested. What information are you required to put in a criminal complaint? Like, how many of your cards do you have to lay out? Because it doesn't seem like they're laying out a lot and still remaining some things close to the vest.
Well, they have a lot of theories in this case, I'm sure, that they have to prove. So you don't need to do that in a probable cause hearing. Probable cause, you just have to say, a reasonable person would believe that a crime has occurred and this person did it. So the threshold is, like I said, low, and you don't really tip everything. Again, it all comes out anyway, because during the discovery phase, you can't have any surprises in the prosecution. The defense has to have everything that you have. So eventually it's all going to come out. And there's an investigation that's still going on. There's a search warrant that was executed in Chicago yesterday. All that evidence has to be sifted through. Do we have tolls? It's just about a 7-hour ride from Columbus to Rockford. So, and a couple of those are tolls. Do we have tolls? Do we have him stopping, using a debit card or credit card at a gas station to get gas? These are all things that you don't necessarily have to put forward in probable cause, but you need to get together for your prosecution.
The investigation took roughly 9 or 10 days to be able to make this arrest. And I think it's easy for the public to say, well, if you had him on surveillance video and you have this person of interest, and then you follow to the next surveillance video, and then you have this car, which through a license plate reader, let's say they have that, then you can tie it to this person. Shouldn't this have been a quick arrest? I know the public, there are people in the public who could say that this was a, kind of a, I'm not saying this, but it was an easy line to make from one to the other. Like, how much work does it actually take to piece together something like that, of tying him to this crime, to also kind of piecing together all of that video and tracking him down?
It takes a while. I mean, 9 days is not unreasonable. And we can think somebody did something for 10 minutes into the case, but you have to prove that. You have to get to that probable cause threshold. And you're also talking about, you're not making an arrest across the street from where the crime occurred. You're making an arrest in Illinois. So you have to make sure you have a warrant in place, obviously, and that warrant is disseminated to other law enforcement so they can execute it. So it takes a while to get that stuff together. 9 days to me is not that unreasonable.
And I think of the last episode we did together, which I think was on Friday last week, and then McKee is arrested, I think sometime between Friday and Saturday. I think he was booked just after midnight on Saturday morning in the sheriff's office out in Rockford. And I remember we were talking about the Columbus chief of police. She did some one-on-one interviews, and she had said, we don't really have a suspect at this point, like very much the poker face. What do you make of just the way that she, having to make a statement to the public, but at the same time, I mean, clearly there was a belief behind the scenes that they had something going.
There was no question. That interview, she had to do it. Like you said, the public needs to know certain things, like their safety. Is there a maniac running around trying to kill people in their homes? She has to come out and say that, no, that's not going on. But she was very good when she said, there's some things we just can't talk about. Now that, for me, says they've got something. They're on the trail of somebody. Is that guy in the alley him? I don't know. Is it a red herring that they threw out there so that McKee feels like they think it's this guy? It's not me. Who knows? But kudos to Columbus PD. They did a nice job on this.
Yeah. And I mean, 9 days, I mean, again, it's one of those things where you want that arrest so quickly just so this family can get the justice that they deserve and there can be some closure for the community. But for as long as 9 days felt at times, I mean, to be able to piece it together the way that they did is very impressive. I think if what is alleged to be true is, and this is someone who had a very good job and, lived in a very nice building in Lincoln Park in Chicago, financially seemed to have a lot of things going well for him. But then at the same time, here is someone who gets in a car and allegedly drives several hours to commit a terrible, terrible crime. And it's just, I think about like at any point in time, if he actually did this, he could have pulled over and turned around, but he didn't. How does that factor into the case that a prosecutor could make, because he is charged with first-degree murder, that this was a premeditated act?
There's no question it was premeditated. It is awfully hard to argue sudden and intense passion on a 7-hour drive to where you're going to commit the crime, which would knock it down to second degree in Illinois anyway. It's very difficult to put that in there and say he just acted spontaneously. He didn't act spontaneously. He planned it out and he decided this was the day that was going to happen. And you know, you're going to probably get some stuff off his computer. You're going to get some stuff off his phones. That's why they collected all that evidence yesterday. And you're not going to be able to make that argument that it was sudden and intense passion. So first-degree murder is appropriate, and I think they can prove it.
At this point, police have not officially said how he was able to get into the house, but they had a security camera. The Tepes did. You know, we can see that there's some sort of whether it's a Ring or some other brand. So, I mean, if they had a security camera, you would think that police have a pretty good idea about how he was able to get into the home. If they do, why withhold that information when making this arrest?
Well, again, it's if they can weigh out what they need to put in the document. They work with a prosecutor before it goes to a judge and say, okay, I think you've got the probable cause. Maybe they didn't need that. And here's another thing. We know that they have surveillance on the front of the house. What about the back of the house? So if he doesn't come in the front door, if he comes in the back door from whatever way he gets in, you may not have video evidence that suggests that. Now, you may have something inside the house because I believe she was found in the bed. He was found outside the bed with multiple gunshot wounds. Maybe he's alerted. Maybe they're alerted when he comes in and there's a struggle. Maybe he takes her out first, which is why there's one shot to her, multiple shots to him, and it wakes him up. And then there's some kind of a struggle. Maybe there's some evidence that he left behind inside the house that they had to process that they couldn't put into probable cause, or they did. We don't know. We didn't see the whole complaint. So we don't know exactly what they put in their charging document, but I have a feeling they knew who they were looking for pretty early on.
How long does it typically take to have that type of evidence processed? Because you have the surveillance video, you're tying him to the scene, but maybe it's the shell casings that we've talked about. Maybe it's fingerprints somewhere in the house. How long does it typically take to get that together to be part of the case that prosecutors will eventually, try? If this goes to trial, we'll try in court.
Well, let's break that down one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So you're talking about video evidence. Video evidence has to be collected by a tech. Okay. I just can't go to a house, and say, hey, listen, I need your Ring camera or your Nest camera. Give it to me. No. There has to be a process. There has to be a tech that downloads it off the equipment, and it has to be documented. It has to be, you have to document how you did it. You have to say that I know how to do it. That's one thing. And it's not just one camera. They track them through the neighborhood. So there's probably multiple cameras that had to be downloaded by a tech. Fingerprints. A fingerprint's fantastic. You can lift a fingerprint out of a house, off a window or whatever, but you have to match it up to someone. So how do you match it up to somebody? How do you match it up to a suspect? Well, we put it into APHIS. That's the fingerprint database. Okay. And if it hits, now I know as a professional, as a police officer, I had to be fingerprinted. And I believe that if you're licensed as a physician or a professional license, that you also have to be fingerprinted. So maybe you get a hit that way. But I think that's a specific request. I don't think everybody goes into APHIS just because you've been fingerprinted. So if a fingerprint's on file, you have to match it. So a fingerprint's really nice to have. But if you don't have anybody to match it to, it's just a fingerprint. You have to do elimination prints from the victims and everybody else in the house. It takes a long time.
He is going to be sent back, presumably. He's having this hearing Monday in Illinois, and then he's going to face charges in Ohio. When he is being brought from, you're taking a suspect facing very serious charges, and you're going to drive him, however many hours. I mean, what is that car ride like to be the officer driving, knowing that you have someone who allegedly took the lives of two people, but this is an open case. I mean, it's, is it small talk in the car? I mean, what are you able to get information from a suspect, a defendant in this case? Like when you're making this, several hour drive, unless they fly them. But I mean, if it's a drive or something like that, I mean, what is that like?
I've done it both ways. I've done it where we fly people. You sit in the last seats in the airplane all the way in the back. There's not much conversation there. And I've also had a long drive from a guy that killed a Chicago police officer that we got up in Winnebago County. No. Warsaw County, I got that all wrong. Dodge County, Wisconsin. Okay, so it's a long ride, Dodge County down to Chicago. And that was a long ride. And there was very little conversation. You can't just casually bring up stuff that's evidence. If you're going to talk to this person, you have to advise them of Miranda. If you are talking to a murder suspect, it has to be on video. So you're better off saying nothing because you have to record it if you're going to talk about the case. And Miranda has to be involved.
And we don't know if he requested a lawyer at this point or what his initial conversations were like with law enforcement, whether it be before the arrest and in the days leading up to it. And then once the arrest was made, whether he made any statements, we'll see if that comes out. But this was a guy who made a good amount of money to live the life that he did professionally. I assume he's going to be able to get a pretty good lawyer. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, what type of access do you as an investigator have after the arrest at this point? Are they going to be able to have with McKee moving forward, assuming he lawyers up?
Now, I would really be surprised if the people from Columbus, the detectives from Columbus, didn't already go to Chicago to try to talk to him. I'd be really surprised if that didn't happen, because that's the first thing I would do, is send my detectives to talk to somebody when they're in custody to see if you can get a statement. Once he has a lawyer, it's a little more tricky. You know, Miranda is, if they ask for counsel, can't talk to him. You can unless they reinitiate contact with you. So you can make a request for an interview through the lawyer, but rarely does that happen where a lawyer will say, "Yep, come on, talk to my client." So the talking to him probably is over with.
And we'll see what happens next. Obviously, a huge step in this investigation. I mean, one of those stories where when the news comes across that the arrest has been made and then you see who it was, it really makes you say, wow. And you hope the families of the Tepes and certainly those children, you think of them, but you hope the families are feeling, some sense of closure that this arrest was made. We'll see how the legal process plays out. Retired detective.
This case is so sad. It's so sad. Okay, everybody, we've been here 3 hours and 13 minutes. I did go longer, Wendy. My apologies for the confusion because a bunch of people started to pour in. We have just under 2,200 people that have been on the stream since we started 3 hours ago, and only 50 likes. So we're going to focus more on the likes. I love when Kitty used to say, hey, we want 100 likes per live. And we used to get 100 likes per live with way less viewers than 2,200. So we're going to focus on that. Thanks to all the mods. I know you guys are new, some of you, and you're just trying to figure out how to deal with this new format and Liane's new focus, which is to stay on topic. If you have questions, I don't mind, but let's do that during the topic at the time, please. If you're coming in late, just say replay maybe. But we're doing a new format here, and it seems like people are liking it because we're getting more people watching without me talking, without the interruptions, just going forward on brand, on topic, without a lot of stops and comments. So thank you, everybody that's been here today. Do all the YouTube-y things, please. I appreciate all the mods, everybody that's loyal to the channel, that's been here since day one, everybody that's new, watching from the weeds at work. Thank you so much. Super appreciate you. We're up to 2,300 now and 51 likes. So please join us again tomorrow. I had to start earlier today because I'm supposed to get a hold of my friend Jim in the wheelchair to finish my car brakes. I have not left my home since December 30th, since starting that, because I was so sick. Thank you, my baby's army. Thank you, honey, because I was so sick. Now Jim's got it. He's sick. But he was supposed to get back to me today because I have no lights. I wanted to get it done before it gets dark, but he has not gotten up yet, Jimmy. Love him, but he's a pain in the ass as far as timing to get a hold of. So my lives are a little bit all over the place. Plus, I had an interview yesterday for a job I'm hoping to get. I had when I started, literally for 3 shifts, long shifts, made no money, and then got sick. So this job, I'm hoping it's okay to hit the bush lick button, says the bushwalker says hope. I'm hoping to get this job. I'll know back in a couple days. I really need to get my car fixed so I can drive it. So that's why all the back and forth on the times. Plus, yesterday I really wanted to be in court live. And as we heard yesterday, Grizzly True Crime with Gizla, like true crime is always, you never know. You never know. So it's kind of like go roll with the punches. So the best thing to do is click with the like and the notification bells so you know when we're going to go live. I'm going to do the best I can to be here tomorrow morning again. Unless Jim's helping with the car, I will also make a post on the post page. So if you're clicked on the notification and you check the post page, you'll know what time I'm going live tomorrow. I'll do the best I can to make it again 11 a.m. in the morning, but it's going to depend on Jim. Oh, prayers for you, Hopi. Let's finish this. Let's hope it's your final one. Thanks, nurse. Nice to see you, honey. You're welcome. Nice to see you. And good luck, Hope. I hope you're doing good luck tomorrow, too. I'll be thinking of you, my dear. You and I are living in the same HELL. Okay, everybody. It really helps the algorithm if you do click on the notification. 52 likes, and we have 2157 of you watching from desktop or laptop and 101 of you from your cell phones. So 52 likes with 2,300 people is not super great. So let's get the likes up if you could, everybody. It helps the channel out. It's really no cost to you other than a 5-second thumb press. As Dolly would say, then we have your DNA should you go missing. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. I appreciate you all. Love and light. Thank you, everybody. Well, I'm just I'm waiting to see. The interview went well. Apparently I'm going to hear back Friday, but they were interviewing more people today, and they interviewed more people Sunday. So fingers crossed. Okay, everybody. See you tomorrow. Be good. Be safe. And hug all your loved ones. And thank you. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks to all the mods and the new mods as well. Love and light, everybody.